Welcome back to Tales of Praxis. I'm your host, the founder of With the Terrible Fate, Aaron Suduko. Thrilled to be joining you on this fine Friday evening. I hope it's fine wherever you are. I mean, there have been fires destroying the air of a lot of parts of the country around here, and we just endured some pretty brutal thunderstorms not that long ago, which had my poor little girl Evie pretty nervous. But I hope physically and spiritually and metaphysically, it's a good Friday evening wherever you are. And I'm thrilled that you would choose to make Tales of Praxis a part of it here on this second installment of our adventure through Tales of Zestiria, which I tweeted about this earlier, but I'm enjoying it and I'm finding myself charmed by the game in ways that I didn't even remember. So I can't wait to see where that goes. I think especially after playing through Dawn of the New World right before this, there's a lot of that game. We talked about this during the stream, just in terms of how subversive and not cynical it is, but it challenges a lot of the outcomes of Tales of Symphonia in ways that I think are interesting. But to go from that kind of tone to something like Zestiria, which is a much kind of simpler and clearer vision of humanity turning to a shepherd to help save them and, as we'll see, redeem them from malevolence and kind of their causing their own downfall, is kind of wholesome, honestly, at the end of the day. That's a big part of what I remember about this game, even the first time I played it. It's kind of unexpected wholesomeness within the broader tapestry of modern JRPGs. So can't wait to get into that with you. It's a fun night for With a Terrible Fate, too. If you're not familiar with the broader publication, we're withaterriblefate.com, dedicated to everything that has to do with understanding, analyzing, and appreciating the storytelling of your favorite video games. That's all we do. We mostly do it in written content, although we also have podcasts and obviously streams such as this. But one of the other things that we really love and have been honored to regularly do over the past 8 years is to contribute panels and lectures to a variety of conventions and conferences. Chief among them is Penny Arcade's series of PAX expos at various places across the globe. And the next one coming up on Labor Day is PAX West in Seattle. So we're big fans of that. We're hopeful to go back this year, all of which is to say, I just finished today managing all of the publication's submissions for various lectures that we'd be interested in giving at the convention. So excited to see what shakes out, but I don't mind telling you right now, a couple of the ideas that I pitched that we're thinking about are deeply related to this series because it is on my mind. In fact, as we kick off and ease into a nice chill Friday night of JRPG gaming, I might just take a moment to preview the panel submissions to you all in case you're interested or want to get a flavor behind the curtain for the kinds of things that we suggest to these conventions. And then, of course, the convention has basically the right of refusal to decide what they do or don't want to host at the convention. And so many of these topics you won't have seen us lecture on. Some we've suggested before. We suggest a decent number for each convention that we end up going to, even if they typically end up only picking one or two, if that, of these topics for us to talk about. But a couple that, as I said, are directly related to this. One is a fun one because I feel like it's become something between a meme and a subculture and maybe even a mode of gaming inquiry. We're thinking about one topic that just poses the question, is Pokemon a JRPG? I feel like that's always a timely topic, but it's especially timely for With a Terrible Fate because obviously I'm running Tales of Praxis and adventuring through the various Bandai Namco JRPGs. And at the same time, my dear friend and colleague Dan Hughes is doing a podcast retrospective on the Pokemon series, which has meant a lot to him over the years growing up. And so if you haven't checked that out, I strongly encourage you to check it out. My best pitch for it is I was never really a staunch fan of Pokemon growing up. And even being outside of the fandom, so to speak, I listen to those episodes and I get an appreciation for where Dan is coming from as a gamer, and I get an appreciation for Pokemon. I feel like the episodes are interesting journeys through those games even without playing them, but I gotta say, it makes me want to play the games too. So the idea for this submission would be basically putting the JRPG stuff that With the Terrible Fate has been diving into in conversation with the Pokemon stuff, and asking the question, okay, what makes a Pokemon game? What makes a JRPG? How can we reconcile them and appreciate their differences and similarities? Another one that's deeply related to those two series, that is to say Tales of Praxis and Dan's podcast series, which is called Pokemon Rose, is a panel that we are suggesting calling How Gamers Grow Up, rereading your favorite childhood games as an adult. If you've been watching Tales of Praxis for a while, this topic should be self-explanatory because I talk about it a lot on the stream. But part of why I'm doing this series, part of why Dan is doing his series on Pokemon, and part of what we're really just advocating the value of as gamers grow into adulthood, is taking the time to dive back into those series of games that kind of shaped the way that you think about gaming as a kid, maybe even in ways that you didn't realize. Maybe you discovered gaming through Zelda and you played the new ones as they came out throughout the years, but you only recently went back to try out the earlier ones, or maybe you just kept going with them in order. No matter how you discover these series, they oftentimes span a huge number of entries that are greater than your entry point into the series. And so we've become real fans, and this is why we're doing the content that we are now, of going back to those series and exploring them as adults all at once in quick succession, so that we can have that kind of bifocal lens of nostalgia for when we were kids experiencing these things, yeah, but also the lens of adults who probably have different or evolved views about storytelling and the value of a video game, looking at these things that meant a lot to us as kids, but maybe even mean something different now, to say nothing of the fact that also by playing those different entries in a series in quick succession, as we're doing with the Tales games, and as I've talked to death about on the stream, you start to see interesting points of comparison and contrast between the various entries in the series in a way that's really hard to do if you're just playing each new entry as it comes out, even with something, as we'll see, like Zestiria and Berseria, where there wasn't that much of a gap between when they came out, but especially with new games being fed to us basically every week or month, or sometimes even every minute on Twitter with the hype cycle for games that aren't even out yet, it can be really hard to keep track of those earlier games in our minds by the time that the sequel or another related game in the series comes out. So we're thinking about talking about that at PAX. We think that would be a really interesting opportunity to basically give grown-up gamers a new way to engage with their childhood games. And then quickly, without as much depth on these other ones, because they don't really have as much to do with the series that we're diving into now, we have one that I'm really excited about and kind of hopeful that PAX picks us to present, all about open worlds, because actually, as I was talking a little bit about last time with regard to Tales of Zestiria, I'm very kind of iffy on the relationship between open worlds and storytelling in games, and what the trend towards more open and larger worlds has done to the way that stories are told in games. And so we're interested in basically giving a panel and just talking about, okay, what do open worlds do to games? What are we looking for in terms of interactive story? And how do those two desiderata intersect? So that would be a really fun one, I think. One is just all about basically how the evolution of how games are published has influenced the way that stories are told in them. This is especially shout out again to the grown-up gamers who remember things like physical discs back when those were much more of a thing, instruction booklets that came with physical copies of games, memory cards versus the way things are now with digital releases, things that are patched day one, the expectation of DLC, games that are even designed to be streamed in the way that I'm streaming a game now. Although Tales of Zestiria, I should say, certainly wasn't designed to be streamed in the sense that I'm talking about now. So we're all aware of the way that games have evolved over time, I think, but I think it's less obvious and perhaps more interesting to think about how those changes and evolutions in games have made new stories possible and maybe made it harder to tell stories that are kind of lost to the earlier generation of how games were published. So we're interested in talking about that. We pitched that to PAX. And then the last one, which is a nice segue into diving back into Tales of Zestiria, is one called How and Why to Run a Gaming Book Club, which is all about basically the premise that, as you know, with The Terrible Fate, is all about video games as a form of storytelling. We think their storytelling is really valuable. It's not always obvious to figure out how to share those stories with other people, right? It's not as easy as sitting down to watch a movie with someone and then talking about it, or even having a book club where everyone goes away, reads the same book, and then talks about it. So we want to talk about various modes of basically community engagement, with your favorite video games? What are the best ways to share it with a friend, whether that's something like a stream or going away and playing it and then comparing and contrasting the choices that you made in a game or some other format entirely. So that's a little window into what it looks like behind the curtain to submit to a convention like PAX West. I hope you found that at least a little interesting as a segue back into Tales of Zestiria, a little prelude, if you will, as we're easing into our Friday night. But we really love those cons. I mean, we love talking about the storytelling of video games in any format, be it written or, live streaming interaction such as this. But there is something that's really special to us about the in-person conversation and interaction that happens at something like a video game convention where everyone is just there because they love this medium so much for their own reasons. It's a nice combination of something deeply individualistic because everyone has their own reasons for loving video games, but also deeply communal because you can look around at any single person at PAX and know that you have something really deeply in common with them by virtue of being passionate enough about video games to attend a convention that is all about them and that takes over pretty much all of downtown Seattle for a weekend. It's very cool. So if you've never been to one, I really encourage you to make a point to look at, what cons might be in your area, maybe even travel to one. It's hard to even say in words how special the feel of that environment is, but as soon as you step on the convention floor, it is something that you feel. There's a kind of magic to that community. So, speaking about the magic of community and magic in general, that's the best transition I can do on the fly. We don't even need to do that much synopsis. I mean, we just kicked things off. I talked last time about how this game was very directly inspired by and modeled after a lot of King Arthur lore, and sort of the broader Christianity mythos that looms even in the background of what inspired like the King Arthur stories in England before that. So we're pretty much following that spirit so far. We met Sorey, the human who was raised by seraphim and therefore can see them, whereas other humans can't. We found out that he was destined to be the next shepherd, whose journey is meant to basically redeem humanity by saving them from the malevolence that begets Hellions. And Sorey basically called to adventure after a fashion by meeting this princess knight, Alicia, I believe her name was, and then traveling down from Elysia, not to be confused with Alicia, where he grew up with the seraphim. He followed Alicia down to the lower kingdom of the humans, and to specifically her kingdom of Lady Lake, because he thought, rightly so, that she would be in danger after encountering a mysterious fox-looking type Hellion guy who appeared to be hunting her down. So that desire to save Alicia quickly cascaded into Sorey finding the literal sword in the stone, an artifact that was basically the tool of and like human world representation of Lila, the Seraph of Fire, whom you now see bonded to Sorey through the pact that he made. Sorey drew the sword out, powered by this pact with Lila and his vow to become the shepherd. And then just before the break, Lila actually explained to him, so you know a little bit about the shepherd, but you don't actually know what his duty is. There are the Hellions, but there's this one kind of super Hellion, the fount of all malevolence, from which Hellions spring, called the Lord of Calamity. You got to find him, you got to take him down, but basically the only way to become strong enough to overcome him is to travel the world, find your own questions and your own answers, learn about other shepherds across history, because Lila has made an oath with herself that prevents her from talking about such things, even though she knows like the history of previous shepherds and such. And only by Sorey going on this journey through this giant overworld, I think the first open world that Bandai Namco really played around with in the Tales series, can he learn what he needs to in order to redeem humanity. So he's absorbing a lot about what he has to do now that he is over his 3-day sleep to recover from Lila, bonding with him and turning him into her vessel. And now I think he's going to get some food at the inn, and we're going to start off properly on the shepherd's journey. So enough preamble. Happy Friday night, friends. Cheers. Let's dive back in.
Welcome back, kind shepherd. Your meal is waiting for you.
Thanks a bunch. All right, let's eat.
I futzed with the audio balance a little bit also because I watched the VOD of the stream and it seemed like the game was a little quiet relative to my voice.
Phew,
So
that was good.
just let me
We'll hit
know
the spot.
in real time how it is if it doesn't sound quite right, and I'm more than happy to adjust the levels.
You ate like a champ.
It was delicious. You sure you don't want me to pay for it?
Of course I am.
Thanks so much, sir.
Oh, I have something for you. A gift arrived from Lady Alicia.
Huh? What could it be? Huh. It's a letter. My sword. Bags and... clothes?
Ah, perfect timing. Go get changed, you kind of smell.
All right, then.
Yeah, people might be into hunting down all of the outfits in Tears of the Kingdom now, but never forget, Tales as a series was all about the outfits and the clothing and the bonus outfits
Not bad.
far before Breath of the
How about
Wild was even a
It
thought
looks
at the
fantastic
Nintendo
on you,
Roundtable.
Lord Shepherd.
It really does. So dashing.
Oh, man. I want one.
It's the garb of the shepherd handed down from tradition in Lady Lake. You wear it well.
So you can put lipstick on a pig.
Just admit it, Mickleo. You're jealous.
Yeah, you wish. So what's the letter all about?
Well, let's see. Dear Sorey, I was surprised that you fainted so suddenly. I hope your rest at the end was rejuvenating.
When I learned that you can communicate with seraphim, beings of divine nature who cannot be seen by ordinary people. When I saw you draw the sacred blade from the Lady of the Lake and quell the riot at the festival before my eyes. My heart leapt with joy, the likes of which I've never known. The only thing I can think of to tell you is a sincere, heartfelt thanks. I hope you do not find this strange. Though I do think that my true feelings do not come across well in a letter. I know that, as the shepherd, you are soon to embark on a journey to save the world. But once you are awake, I would like you to come and visit me at my home. P.S. Did you have a chance to try on the clothes I got for you? They're modeled after the traditional garb of the legendary shepherd. I hope they are to your liking. My, what a kind-hearted young woman.
Yeah, seriously. I should be the one who's thanking her.
Why not do it in person then?
Good idea. Let's move.
Come back and see us again, kind shepherd.
You bet I will.
All right, Evie also sends her best. If you didn't hear all of her grumbles, which is why I muted my mic for a moment. Since I mentioned her woes on the last stream, I will update anyone who is curious. We got the results of her x-ray because, as you might recall, her leg was bothering her, and the radiologist was able to basically rule out all of the potentially really bad things that could be wrong with her, so they think that she just has a minor soft tissue injury or a partial tear, and she's just being an absolute prima donna about it, which, if you know my dog, is totally consistent with how she is. But as you can hear, she's in a little bit of better spirits, so we're all happy about that. I think, unsurprisingly, she has put her favorite squeaky bone under my couch, so I'm going to try to quickly grab that in hopes that it might chill her out. But regulars to the stream will know that's a bit of a futile struggle. All right, I have gotten her bone for her. That was side adventure 1 in this stream of Tales of Zestiria. So hopefully that might relax her a little bit, but only time will tell. Now then,
These clothes offer
let's
more
go
mobility
find
than I
Lady
thought.
Alicia.
They look purely ceremonial at first glance, but it turns out they're practical.
Quite so. Perfect for the journey we're about to undertake.
It looks like all the hype from the festival settled down.
But now everyone's talking about the shepherd.
I'm going to ruin these background vocalizations for you too, because I'm remembering this from when I played this game in the past. It sounds like indistinct chatter, but for whatever reason, at least to my ear, there's this one female voice that's like at just the right pitch. It just happened. You'll hear it after I point it out to you, where it's like it's distinguished from the rest of the crowd, and her line is, "Yeah, over here." And you can like, once you hear it, you'll never unhear it, and it like perfectly helps you clock the loop of the audio, so it immediately all feels much less, like randomized conversation and more like just a looped audio track after you catch that. So if you didn't get that already, I am more than happy to have ruined that aspect of the game for you.
Ah, the shepherd. Have you need of Lord Alicia? She's on the terrace as we speak.
Thanks, I'll see if I can find her.
To the terrace. The star does help.
Sorey, you came.
Alicia!
The shepherd's garb looks wonderful on you.
Thanks!
Some fine lipstick on that pig.
Yes,
Boy,
Mick
Mickleo is really
Leo.
not letting that one go. At least Sorey calls him on it.
I take it there's a seraph present with you?
Yeah, and he won't stop roasting me.
If I told you there was, would you believe me?
To be honest, up until the events that took place at the Sacred Blade Festival this year, I wouldn't have. But even from the moment we met, I could tell, how can I put it? There was something different about you.
Well, she's right, you know.
Right here is a seraph. His name is Mickleo.
Please, find it in your grace to forgive my rudeness up until now, Seraph Mickleo.
Rudeness? You've never struck me as rude.
He says you've never done anything to offend him.
This is fun. I wish they'd kind of played with this joke
And
a little
this
more
here
in
is Lila.
Dawn of the New
She's
World
the one
with
everyone
Tenebrae.
calls the Lady of the Lake.
I truly believe in my heart that you were meant to become the shepherd. Whereas I mean all of us here in the city, can be standing right next to Seraphim and still not know.
That's not quite true.
She can't hear you.
Sorey, try taking Alicia's hand in your own.
Huh? Oh, sure. Alicia, give me your hand. Like this?
Testing, testing. Check 1, check 2. Can you hear me? Hello?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay then. Sorey, try closing your eyes. Testing, testing. Alicia, can you hear me now?
It's still no good.
This is the direct equivalent of adjusting an antenna
This
on a
time,
radio
close your eyes
in
and
fantasy
also
world
hold your
logic.
breath. Alicia?
I can hear it, another woman's voice.
Really?
Alicia, we Seraphim are able to see right into the very hearts of humans. Remember to show gratitude to all things. It is in exchange for this gratitude that we offer our blessing. No matter the circumstances, never neglect the Seraphim, or your heart shall turn to malevolence, and this in turn shall bring calamity.
Fear not, Alicia. We have indeed seen your gratitude for ourselves.
Sorey, one more time.
Isn't there a better way to do this?
I'm afraid this is the only method we have for now. Once you've grown more accustomed to my power and have amassed more experience as both a vessel and a shepherd, I believe such a strict sensory block will not be required.
So, does that mean once I do grow stronger as a shepherd, everyone will be able to hear the Seraphim?
As for Alicia, she already possessed a natural resonance from birth, though nowhere near as much as you, Sorey.
I see. Looks like it's not that simple.
Regardless, I was able to have a conversation with her. I now have no doubts that the Seraphim do indeed live among us. And that alone.
Gets you excited?
Yes!
The legends are no mere fairy tales. Okay! Alicia, we're going to stay in town for a while yet. Let me know if you need anything. Take care!
I will. You too.
Sorey?
Looks like our explorer's all fired up.
An interesting combination of like faith and evidence-based reasoning. I feel like with the way that the relationship between humanity and the Seraphim is being spun out, because like Lila said, the only reason that Alicia was able to hear Lila speak through that like magic seraph radio with Sorey was because she had natural resonance and she was like predisposed to it, maybe in terms of the same like moral compass according to which she was a princess and a knight, right? And so she had belief and a kind of faith in the Seraphim. Like she knew to treat their land in this kind of hallowed and honorable way back when she was up in Elysia with Sorey. But she was also very willing to say, like, you know, before everything that happened at the festival, like, I would have doubted that they were really here and you were talking to them. But then once I heard Lila, all of my doubt was erased. So there's like a recognition that it's possible to doubt yet still believe in the Seraphim, and doing right by them isn't just a matter of like blind faith, but more of the kind of collaborative exercise that can actually lead to like recognizing Seraphim as individuals on the same sort of, well, maybe not the same existential plane as humans, but on a sufficiently similar ones that you can interact with them, unlike a lot of divine beings in various mythologies and religions.
Relax, those ruins aren't going anywhere.
What? How did you know what I was thinking about, Nick Leo?
Didn't I tell you I wasn't gonna let you go off by yourself? So what's
You're the new ruin maniac, now that Rain is gone, Sorey.
There's gotta be a clue around here somewhere.
Okay.
Alright, back to clue hunting. Easier now that I've recalled how to use the local map. Good lordy, we got herbs hanging out everywhere in this game. 10-gallon hat. Oh, a hefty sum indeed. Right, so I forget whether it's in addition to or instead of outfits in Tales of Zestiria. No, there are still costumes. Yeah, so we can even go back to Sorey's regular clothes if we want to. So in addition to costumes, we have attachments for even more customizability and character appearance. My God. I'm sure there are some people who enjoy rolling through these games with very, let's say, unusual or spirited fashion choices. Which is, I don't know. I mean, I like the outfit system in the Tales games because I feel like, maybe not all, but a lot of the outfits are like believable garbs that the characters would wear that just highlight different aspects of their character. We had some conversations around that, I think, in reference to some of Regal's outfits in Tales of Symphonia, like the one he gets for being the president of the Lazzareno Company. But, man, some of those attachments, like a silly hat, when it goes beyond the pale of the narrative, I feel more distracted by them than anything. And then it doesn't feel like a nice customizable nuance. It feels like just, I don't know, silliness. But maybe I'm a fuddy-duddy. A stick in the mud. Oh yeah, this just takes us back to Lila's sanctuary, I think. The church. Ooh, fresh save point, though. And a
Good
skip.
thing the armor shop had both a ceremonial sword and staff. Also, there's something I kind of wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I know. You want to ask if this staff looks like it's floating in midair to humans. Is that it?
How'd you know?
One look in your eyes says it all. Even if it's an item that humans can see, when Seraphim infuse mana into it, it will become unrecognizable by humans. The opposite is true as well. Anything made by a Seraph can be recognized by humans if mana gets infused in that item. Although, it's kind of a rare ability.
So Gramps' pipe is like that.
Quite perceptive of you.
In fact, Gramps told you everything you just told me, didn't he?
That's also quite perceptive of you.
So another interesting insight by virtue of playing this right after Dawn of the New World. We have the same kind of dynamics that figured really centrally in the climax of Dawn of the New World in terms of the role of mana in the world, and Ratatosk ultimately, resolving to withdraw mana from the world in such a way that beings could subsist without it. And now it seems like, based on what Gramps is saying by way of Micleo, there's a similar sense in which mana is this kind of animating magical force that is like separate from the physical in the world, but that kind of provides a medium of interaction between the Seraphim world and the human world. Oh, okay. There's another section of Lady Lake outside the aqueduct. Maybe that's where we're supposed to go.
Now I've grasped this areas quite well.
Viewers of the
There's someone
Symphonia
suspicious.
stream will recall
Is
that I
that
said
turtle
cats were ultimately subverted by turtles.
Hellion. I'm just a turtles.
Turtles? So wait a minute. Are they Seraphim?
Turtles are turtles. Can't you tell from looking at us?
Oh,
The more you interrogate
sorry.
it, Sorey, the worse the
A
outcome will
brave
be.
new world that has such turtles in it.
You're telling me,
Ain't you
Miglio.
ever seen a turtles before?
I've barely gotten used to cats.
What are you, some bumpkins? Well, lucky for yous guys, we turtles are a forgiving bunch.
Well, thank you.
And we's are all
You guys sure
from
are kind.
Brooklands,
Of course, the big heartedness of
along
the
with our
turtles
good
is
friend
proportional to the
Joey
size of our
Wheeler.
shells.
And what were you doing here?
I'm making maps for our purposes.
Oh, maps.
Come to think of it, we don't have any decent maps. The one in the Celestial Record is quite old.
Yous guys sure are reckless. Says, can I sells you some of my maps? They're chock full of useful informations.
Thanks. It's a big help.
Thank yous. I'm darn pleased that you bought my maps.
I don't remember what the actual discrepancies are that emerge from them being crafted by a turtles as opposed to a person or a seraph, but I love that idea. It would make sense that would make them imperfect from our perspective.
An underground waterway. Sounds worth looking into.
So one of them hasn't returned yet. Wonder if he's okay.
Are you going?
Yeah, I'm worried about anyone who isn't coming back.
Sorey. You can feel it, can't you?
I can. There's definitely strong malevolence coming from the center of town.
I must say, your ability is indeed impeccable. It looks like you're acclimating to your power already, far faster than I'd even imagined.
I am?
The day when you will come into the true power of the Shepherd is not far off.
What kind of power is that?
Ugh, oh, sorry about that.
I'll never tell, but I'll be really goofy about
Soon
it.
enough.
Yep.
I think it's interesting too to pose the question of how realistic or unrealistic is this fantasy world, specifically in the sense of like how much can we imagine ourselves in the shoes of the Avatar and the other characters in it. So I'm thinking about what it means to like directionally sense malevolence in the way that Sorey can now that he's the shepherd, right? As he said, oh yeah, there's strong malevolence near the center of town. And on the one hand, it feels kind of silly and fantastical that you could sort of sense evil emanating from a certain place. But also, like, have you ever just had one of those experiences where you walk into a place, maybe a new one, maybe one that you've been many times before, and it just feels totally off, like something is deeply wrong?
No way. I'm helping too.
Because I feel like that is a very
I told you.
like human
Lila and I have
experience.
this. Get back!
And it's interesting to think that part of the like the way this world's fantasy dresses up the moral universe of living is
Will
just
the
by
person inside be okay?
taking that
Slimes
kind
can
of very
solve
ordinary
physical attacks with
experience
their
and making
bodies.
it
Does
extraordinary.
that mean it's harder to defeat them?
No, I just meant that the person inside should be fine.
Well, there's some good news. Yeah! Tiger Blade! No escape! No escape! Not yet! Come on!
All right, Aaron hasn't lost the threat of the battle system yet. I'm gonna call that a win. Oh, in fact, I think we got a new art at the end of last time, and I didn't map it yet. Nope. Totally my imagination. It might have been a martial art. That's one of the confusing things about this game. I seem to remember, like, sometimes you'll get things that seem like new arts, but it's not clear where they go. Maybe that's just my not knowing where to look. Anyway.
Full
Oh, that dodge super failed.
Splendid job, Sorey.
Let's keep it up.
Seraphic arts. Previously known as spells. I always wonder, like in this tutorial, it talks about the mechanics of how to, as a player, change the dynamics of spells, or what they're calling seraphic arts. I never play as casters in these games. I always default to someone who's more melee oriented, even if I switch around within that smaller subset of characters. But I wonder whether people go through entire playthroughs of a Tales game just playing as a caster. I imagine you would see the world very differently. It strikes me as much less intuitive and natural based on the way that a lot of these combat systems are set up. So I wonder how well it would actually support an entire caster first playthrough. If anyone's watching the stream or VOD and has experience with that, I would love you to share what that was like for you.
He wouldn't believe you even if you told him.
You were drowning.
I was? Thank goodness you showed up then. I should head back and lie down for
Oh my
a bit.
god, the shepherd tells lies. I wouldn't expect that from the
I'm fine, I promise.
anthropomorphized center of the moral universe.
All right then. Now we can romp around the ruins without that weighing on our minds. Mikleo?
From now on, I'm fighting too.
But you don't have the power of purification.
So what are you asking me to do? Stand around behind you and twiddle my thumbs? I didn't come along just to be a liability for you.
Mikleo.
Lila, is there any way I could use the power of purification as well?
There is one way. You could become a sublord and place your power alongside mine. And like me, you would need to dwell inside Sorey, my vessel.
I'll do it.
No, hold on now. You need to think about this first.
I need to think about this? I don't recall a whole lot of thinking when you decided to become a shepherd.
That's
That was
true.
completely different. Is purifying Hellions your life dream? I doubt it.
I am a seraph.
Sorey was also very clear about his life dream in the previous stream, and it was not to be the shepherd. It was to explore ruins and learn about the past of the world in order to improve the present. So maybe after a fashion, the shepherd would help with that, or being the shepherd, that is, but don't act like that's your
I'm not getting
dream.
hysterical.
Mikleo.
Your liability will be waiting back at the end.
Oh,
Sorey, we should go after him.
He said he's going back. Let him have his way.
how
I
quickly
see.
the bromance
This is
falters.
you, brotherhood between men.
Ah, taking my lines, Lila.
But even so, you should know what you did was cruel. Surely you understand how Mikleo feels, don't you? I've decided.
Huh? About what?
Moving on ahead. Yes, this is a fine idea.
I don't even get what you're talking about.
No one
Well, the
does.
ruins
That's
won't
part of her
explore
charm.
themselves, though that would be grand.
She's like, I'm trying to pin Lila's character on like the overall n-dimensional grid of different character traits and comparisons in
Some
the
of us
Tales
are low on
corpus.
health.
I feel like even just using our like shared experience together with Symphonia, and maybe Dawn of the New World, it's kind of like Colette crossed with Marta, I guess, because Colette is so kind of pure but klutzy and ditzy and kind of always just following along and not quite sure of what's going on. And not really choosing her own path, but reacting instead of acting. Whereas Marta, like, she's still well-intentioned. You know, she hid all of her associations with the Vanguard and a lot of her true intentions at the beginning, and there was some,
A door
like,
with no keyhole,
plotting,
marked with the crest
a little
of the
bit of
Kingdom
subterfuge
Highland.
to her. And I feel like Lila
This is
is,
no door.
like, she knows what's going on,
It's a
and she's
seal.
not going to reveal it, but the way that she
seal,
deflects
is
is
it?
being just really silly with
Find
everyone.
relics or artifacts
In the
that are
kind of
politically inconvenient
laugh it
for the
off way
current
that
regime,
Colette oftentimes was to her
they tend to
own
brand them
downfall.
forbidden and seal them away from prying eyes. And if the seal was placed there by the royal family, that would suggest the key is connected to them as well. Huh? What's up?
You certainly are quite the budding archaeologist.
Yeah, ever since childhood, exploring ruins was pretty much the only hobby Mikleo and I ever had. That Mikleo, if I ever discovered anything, he'd run out the next day and discover something else.
And?
Oh, that's about it.
Can you unlock the seal?
Oh, right. I think I'll examine the door a bit more.
I think the knife that my intuition was kind enough to remind me not to sell to Rose unlocks the store.
What could this be?
Maybe? Maybe I'm totally
Just need
misremembering.
the key now.
No, I was right. Royal knife, baby! Wonder what happens here if you do sell the knife to Rose. If you have
Yes.
to go and get it back
Well,
from her or
it certainly
something.
is a unique key.
Don't think I've ever
It
done
looks
that in the
just like
past.
a knife.
That's because it is.
Things can have more than one function, Lila. Come on. Oh! Almost missed a monolith.
I just saw a monolith written in ancient tongue.
Oh my god, and I forgot that we have to fuse equipment on top of all of the skill stuff that we were talking about in the last stream. To like stack and evolve skills and all this stuff. God, I was iffy about it on the last stream, but no ifs, ands, or buts about it this time. I am confident and will fight that the combat systems are just more complex in this game than in the earlier Tales games. There's no comparison. I think the more interesting question is, compare something like this in 2015 with Tales of Arise, which we just got a couple of years ago. And I feel like, I don't know if Arise got simpler per se, or if they just had a better sense of how to balance it, because that felt like a return to really intuitive, easy to manipulate combat systems to me, in terms of what I knew from the past with Tales and with other JRPGs versus this. And as we were talking about even on, I think, the Dawn of the New World stream, like, forget about it with Berseria, the follow-up to this. Like, as we will see after we finish this one, Berseria's system is, I mean, I vividly remember it was so much for me to figure out that I mostly just resorted to button mashing in order to get through the battles, and it's the kind of system that's designed to support that. So it'll be interesting to keep track of the way that the complexity evolves from this then to Berseria, and then if we end up playing Arise at some point, which I would certainly be down for. I love that game. Our fine shepherd. I love a tutorial voice that editorializes. I do. I said that kind of flippantly, but I think actually one of the really cool levers that game storytellers have for adding nuance to the fictions in kind of unexpected ways is adding a sense of perspective and voice in places you wouldn't expect it, like tutorial boxes. I think I wrote about this in my work on Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3. I'd have to go back and check. But especially 2 has like a similarly like clearly defined perspective and sense of narrator that has desires and ends and things that it wants to express every time it teaches you something new as a player. I wish more games did that. What can we buy? Literally just an apple gel. Good enough. Yeah, that's right. Even the shops level up based on the amount of business you do with them. I think... I'm by no means a Tales historian, by the way. I know a lot about the storytelling of the game, but not so much in terms of their history. Although I'm definitely learning by doing this stream. I think that whole like leveling up of shop rank was introduced in Xillia, which was before this. It is an interesting idea. Kind of one of those systems that, I mean, strictly speaking, it adds complexity, but easier than a lot of the combat systems we talked about in terms of wrapping your head around, or at least wrapping my head around. And intuitive in the sense that, you know, as you do more business with the shop and more money flows through them, they're able to kind of upgrade and provide more things. It does make it feel like you're kind of investing in the various like towns and resources that you regularly use, and incentivizes you to do so.
Sword, it's ginormous.
This is an altar to the sacred blade. It was constructed in the era of Asgard.
Lila, do you know about this? Lila?
You'll recall, Asgard is also a town name in Silverhunt, in Tales of Symphonia. Well, as we've been talking about, most of this game is King Arthur, Christianity, that whole flavor of the world. Asgard, I believe, is Norse, you know, from Norse mythology. The seat of the gods, right? I think is Asgard.
This is where I formed the pact with the previous shepherd.
Ah, so as we discover more of the world,
Really?
she's able to share more information with us.
But then,
Very
why
cool.
couldn't you tell us before?
Consistent with her
You and Mikleo
dictum
looked
that
like you were
Sorey
both
has
having
to
so much fun.
explore the world and learn things for himself.
I didn't want to go and sour your explorer spirit by spoiling the end.
Basically what I said in so
And
many
on top
words.
of that, I kept silent for your sake.
For my sake?
I want you to understand, you must not feel obligated to bear the world's burden on your shoulders alone.
Huh?
So, how does it feel having reached these ruins? You don't feel as excited as you imagined you might be, right? By any chance, do you know why this is?
Well...
You do not wish for your friends to share the burden of your duty. Is that correct?
I guess I'm really that transparent, aren't I?
This is a problem that always arises between the shepherd and their seraphim friends, no matter the era. Sorey, you must understand how Mikleo feels, do you not?
Yeah.
Very well. There is nothing left for me to tell you.
Thank you, Lila.
And now, allow me to show you the real reason I brought you all the way here. I want to bestow this onto you.
A jewel?
They are called iris gems in the world of humans. But they are originally known as the Earthen Historia.
Iris gems. Earthen Historia.
So, can you see anything?
Huh? Like what?
The object you are holding allows those with resonance, that is, the ability to sense seraphim, to see the memories that are contained within. They should serve you well as guideposts in your search for the Lord of Calamity.
But I can't see anything.
You can't? That certainly is odd. Sorey?
Let's head back. There's nothing more we can find out.
But...
Hey, we can come back anytime we need to.
Indeed. And with Mikleo, of course.
I don't remember thinking about this explicitly with regard to Zisteria before, but it is an interesting and I think kind of unusual idea for someone like the savior of the world, in this case Sorey, to be saddled with this duty. And this early in his quest where like Lila has just told him what his duty is, but there's no way he can really fully understand the scope of what that burden really consists in yet, right? He hasn't done anything, he's just been told kind of very perfunctorily what the duty is. He's already worried about like his friends having to bear that duty with him. It's like, how can you even really coherently worry about that when you don't really understand what the duty consists in for yourself yet, right? But maybe that's part of the point, that his friendship with Mikleo
So
just
then,
means wanting to
is this sealed
safeguard
as well?
him no matter
From
what
the
the duty
inside?
consists in.
This is an altar created in order to bring forth shepherds. It does not open unless one can wield the flames of purification.
Oh, I smell a sorcerer's
Wait
ring
a
coming
minute.
on.
Doesn't that mean anyone who failed to become a shepherd could never get out of here?
Indeed, it is a relic of a much crueler era.
I see.
You have already been bound to me and are quickly becoming accustomed to my power. I expect you should be able to wield the flames of purification by now.
So, all I have to do then is light this torch?
Yes, but be wary. Those who could not become shepherds may have perished here, but their emotions linger on. This malevolence hangs here like a miasma.
Meaning that Hellions are lurking about, right?
Exactly. Proceed with caution.
Okay.
And remember, when Lila talks about emotions lingering on, we learned last stream, as will be important for us to keep in mind going through this duology of games, that when we talk about Hellions being born of malevolence, malevolence is understood not just as this straying from the moral center and purity of the world, but also as like an emotional, I almost want to say emotional failing, but that doesn't sound quite right. But at a minimum, an emotional response. It's born of something other than rationality in terms of how humans adjudicate their position with the reality of the world in which they find themselves. Silver Flame. This time we don't even have a ring as such. We just have Sorey wielding the elemental powers of the Seraphim with whom he's bonded. I miss the ring, man. It was such a core aspect of the gameplay I knew and loved. As it does, Tales fans will know. So, I mean, granted, we've only played the Symphonia duology so far in the stream, but it comes up over and over again. It is a mainstay of the
Counting on you,
series.
Lila!
There are some that grow larger when they become hellions.
But it's way bigger than the ones we've seen. Yeah! Ready? No escape! That's the way! Yeah! Ready? Strike! Yeah!
Everyone, are you all right?
Yes, and different characters have different field skills that happen periodically too. Can you tell me that you're keeping track of all the different systems we have to manage in this game? Truly, I hope it doesn't seem as if the stream so far is overly focused on the complexity of these systems, because I think, and I hope I'm doing justice to the fact that there's a lot of really interesting stuff to unpack in the game. Besides that, I just am repeatedly overwhelmed by just how many systems they have. It's also worth noting, I mean, to be fair to this game, right, one of the things we need to take seriously is the fact that we did make a very big jump in terms of just raw number of years and also, like, number of games produced by the Tales studio between our last game, Dawn of the New World, and this one. From 2008 to 2015, right? And there were, I don't have the wiki up in front of me, but there have to have been at least like 5 My gut tells me 5, but a number of Tales games in between this one and Dawn of the New World. So we're jumping ahead many games. My sense, and even what I can tell you for a fact based on having played a number of those other games in between, is that many of these systems have been gradually built up over the successive titles in the series. So it's not as if people who are playing the games as they came out suddenly encountered Zestiria and were hugely overwhelmed, because it's like, well, it's like power creep, right? As happens in anime and as happens in any individual JRPG, right? Like the systems gradually become more advanced and powerful and complicated. That'd almost be an interesting article to do, right? Power creep as represented in systems complexity in series of JRPGs. But I don't know, maybe that would be a very niche topic for an analysis as I think of it.
You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
The most gentlemanly post-battle jab coming from Sorey, our shepherd here. Boy, I'll tell you, regulars to the stream will know I had on some guest cooperators on some of the streams for Tales of Symphonia and Dawn of the New World, friends and colleagues of mine from different parts of my life. And I had a hard enough time teaching them the combat systems to those games, but I'm just thinking with like how every single battle so far has introduced a new tutorial for a new nuance of this system, like, oh, I hope no one comes and visits me while I'm playing through Zestiria, because I don't even know where I would begin with giving them a crash course in playing this game alongside me.
I can't believe it.
I think it supports co-op.
so
I
many of
think
them.
most, if not all, of the Tales games
I
do.
have no idea. Do you feel any different? A new power manifesting, or a new sort of strength welling up inside you? Do you feel like that at all?
Huh? I don't feel any different.
So it really hasn't happened yet.
There's too many.
It would be
Is there
helpful
any
if you
end to
could
this?
tell me what it is.
Sorey, we have to break on through.
Okay.
Astute UI detectives will observe there's a new number on the screen.
Still pull through.
Call it if you see it. The little zeros on the far right of each of the character tiles on the bottom left of the screen. Interesting that they put that number into the interface before we even understand what it does, what the point is. I bet that's the trigger for advancing the sequence. Yeah, they both have to hit 1 on that gauge.
What are you talking about?
Oh, and it's like Lila can sense it. That's cool. So it's like
What?
we see their like level of preparedness for this evolution, and Lila is aware of it, but Sorey is blind to it. It's a cool way of situating the player's perspective
my true
relative to
name.
that of the characters in the game.
This is...
Recite that name. Harness the power that flows from it and let it become your armor.
A similar
That
theme
is
to
the
the
true
power of
power of
the
the shepherd.
name in the World Tree in Dawn of the New World. Never would have caught that had we not just
All
played
right, I'll give
Dawn
it
of
a
the New
try.
World.
Mioma!
Pretty cool true name. Wow, and how's this for an upgrade in cinematic value?
This is armatization.
Not that Dawn of the New World was shoddy per se,
I
but
can feel such
it was
incredible
2008.
power. All right, time to finish this.
Armatization. Welcome to level 2 of the overall complexity scheme in Tales of Zestiria. Good question. No, that's not the last level of complexity. We've got a ways to go, friendo. This is only, what, hour 5 now that we've just rolled into of the stream? Come on, it's a JRPG. Press L1 in normal state to consume 1 blast gauge, which they're just hoping, I guess you will intuit, is the new gauge that has appeared that we already talked about. And Armatus. Invoke the power of the Seraphim and take command of a formidable weapon. Kind of like the gameplay equivalent of drawing the sword from the stone, to keep up with that theme that we saw in real time happen in the festival last time. You combine all the stats of Sorey and Lila. Basically turn them into one super character. This is where the game starts getting complicated and where its battle system starts diverging pretty starkly from the others. It's basically, I mean, it's the Boo saga in DBZ, right? For those who are watching a JRPG stream and are also familiar with anime. You're probably more familiar than I am. I'm only nominally familiar with anime. But the part that I remember is the fusion dance the characters would do to become more than the sum of their parts. Same idea here. Fewer characters on the field, but they're stronger than they were individually.
Burn! Burn away! Flow forth! Burn! Flow forth! Burning at the pillars of flame! Blood moon!
I do like the way the Armatized version
easy.
combines the voiceover of the two fused characters. It sounds more natural than you would expect.
Proof of one's status as a shepherd. It means you have mastered its power.
Still, that was way too close for comfort. Gaining that new power right at the last second there.
I'll say, I must admit even I was worried. But in the end, you did an absolutely marvelous job.
Ah, shucks. Come on, you're embarrassing me.
By the way, since the Hellions are safely defeated, what do you say you go ahead and remove the armatization?
How do I do that?
Huh?
I can't get it off.
What? Is that what's supposed to happen?
That's what I want to know.
So, you can't read the Earth in Historia. You were able to unleash the power of armatization with amazing speed, and yet now you can't turn it off. Sorey, you're just a total
You
mess.
sure are a wonky shepherd,
Yes,
Sorey.
I guess.
Jesus Christ, Jesus!
Come on, Lila. Oh, there it goes.
I suppose once the Armatus has been invoked, you'll just have to wait until it dissolves. I'm sure in due time you'll be able to use it at will.
If you say so.
I don't know if it's more entertaining for the stream for me to read these silently, quietly become overwhelmed, or to read them out loud. Honestly, dude, it's like if I were playing this on my own, I would take more time to try to understand and study these like gameplay mechanics, but at the end of the day, I know, and I can tell you this because this is a game that I'm replaying as opposed to playing for the first time, I end up being kind of like just as overwhelmed and at a loss in terms of how they all fit together. And I'm not a neophyte to JRPGs, I play a lot of them. I think it's just something about the systems in this game. Overwhelm my mind.
You can eat as much as you want whenever you're not feeling well.
Speaking of non sequiturs. Yeah, weaknesses and resistances I can wrap my head around. I got that monolith, right?
I don't think we've checked that monolith out yet.
Nope. More about harmonization. Okay, that's right. So the Banish Blast is important because that's like an upgraded combo, and we hold R2 during combos to trigger that. And Rejuvenation, I forget if that heals everyone or revives them, but that's a really powerful healing spell. Okay. Good to know. Oh my goodness, we got another monolith. I guess it's about
Is that a
armatization. Nope, more about weaknesses and resistances. Ah, not just a combo, a weakness combo. So exploiting a vulnerability triggers a combo where everyone is stronger than they usually would be. That is handy, Mr. Tutorial Voice. Thank you so much.
Tiger Blade! Hang on, everyone! Yeah! Be gone! Strike! Yeah! Ready? No escape! How's this? Yeah! Tiger Blade! Hang on, everyone! It's over! Right! Be gone!
Let us not be full of ourselves and continue.
Last gauge. Now that we've already had to use it and experienced it unexplained, let's explain it. A latent power that could push you beyond your limits. Sounds suspiciously similar to limit breaks from certain other games that shall not be named. I do like, though, like, this isn't a good example, but in the Final Fantasy games, I guess they will be named, they actually do a pretty good job if you go back and play those original games of explaining, like, the in-world fictional reasons behind those mechanics and what they consist in. Like, limit breaks, if I remember in Final Fantasy VII, there's something like an overflowing of rage or emotion or maybe resentment. And then in Final Fantasy IX, you have the whole concept of characters going into a trance, which are also similarly emotions-based, I think. I might be conflating the two. But I love it when games go to that level of detail in terms of, like, explaining what actually constitutes all of these sort of, you know, evolutions or changes that happen in battle. Because that can really be the make or break difference in many cases in terms of like appreciating how the gameplay and all of those like combat functions tie into the story and the overall narrative content you're meant to take away from it. Again, without, you know, too many spoilers per se for Final Fantasy IX, but think about the trance system and everything you learn about that, and, like, you know, one of the key climactic points of the game is fighting against Trance Kuja, whose meaning and impact is only possible if you've, you know, taken the time to not only use trance as a gameplay mechanic, but really think about what it means for the people who are born of those worlds and interact with them in those particular ways. Listen, Tutorial Voice, don't act like any of this is easy. We have to try to keep track of it all in our head at the same time. My day was going great until I had to gain encyclopedic knowledge of these systems. And don't prod me to raise the battle difficulty. I had a whole diatribe in the last stream about why I was very happy with normal. Gotta hunt some torch sconces. Well, I think we can manage that.
Ready, everyone? Yeah, let's get him! Let's get him! Right!
And Armatus.
The ruins are calling me.
Boy, we lowered the ladder just to jump down. Doesn't seem like the most prudent course of action.
Phew! Finally!
So, what are your plans now?
I doubt he's at the inn.
Oh, Mikleo? But he said he would wait for us back at the inn when he left.
So, the ruins below spread out all over the place, right? If that's the case, I'll bet Mikleo went off to search for another entrance. One that's not this one.
Huh? You mean Mikleo went into the ruins alone? How dangerous, how downright reckless of him! The Hellions here are spreading like wildfire! You just saw firsthand what a force they are to be reckoned with. How can you be so calm when your friend is in peril like this?
He'll be fine. I know he's not the type to let his guard down when he's faced with real danger. And I'm sure he knows full well that he has no ability to purify the Hellions all by himself. Don't worry.
You really do have the utmost faith in him, don't you?
Well, it's a love-hate sort of thing.
Speaking of faith versus evidence.
I see. So Mikleo has a sort of rivalry going on with you, and thus he went alone to search for the ruins rather than return to the inn. But you're sure he wouldn't do anything dangerous by himself. So then, what are your plans now, Sorey?
Man, you sure have a mean streak, you know that?
Oh, do I?
But anyways, first I have to return this to Alicia.
Oh, the knife you used to open the door.
We found this at the ruins, where I first met her. It was probably handed down by the royal family. I'm sure it's very important. Before I begin my duty as a shepherd, I feel like I should return it.
Yeah, boy, with how central the knife is to these
you
early
had
motions
something
in the
else to tell
plot,
me, right?
I wonder whether it was
About
even
what
really
it is
possible
to
to
be
sell
the
it to
shepherd?
Rose, or if
I'd
she
like
would
to hear the rest of
like
what you had
reject
to
the
say.
sale or give it back to Sorey before all this happens.
It's true, I do. But first, to that same end, there are things I would like to ask Alicia as well.
Perfect. Let's head over to her manor then.
We might find Mikleo as well.
Oh, yeah. He'll probably give up and wander back anytime now.
Now that would be perfect.
Boy, I knew you had a mean streak.
Suspicious! Boy, I love the way Lila is talking about and kind of unearthing the relationship between Sorey and Mikleo as she spends more time with them.
Oh, hey! So you made it out okay?
I love that idea that she
You really saved my butt
has
back there.
gone
Thanks
along with
so
all the
much.
shepherds over the years
Oh,
and
nah.
like gradually
It was nothing
learned
really.
more about humanity and the
Really, our
relationships
thanks
between
as
them.
well.
And so it's kind
When
of
this
just
guy
like,
went missing, we thought he'd just up
oh,
and gone
okay,
home
who's this
already.
latest human and what's his
Whoa,
relationship
now,
with his
hang on
friends
a
and how can I
second.
add that to
Aren't you
my
the shepherd?
comprehensive
That actually
understanding
fits the
of
description in all the
humans and
rumors
how
to
they
a
are
T.
and how delightful is
Well,
that?
For real? This is the guy that pulled the sword? I figured you were something special, but this is more than I even bargained for.
Gotta thank you proper for saving me. Wanna get some grub later?
To think I'd become buds with the great shepherd himself. My wife and kid are gonna.
You and I are buds now!
When they hear this.
To paraphrase the
well, I don't know
great
if...
Jameson Price as voiced
This must
in
be
Mere
tough, but
Gestalt.
hang in there.
We'll be cheering you on.
He'll be all right. He's the one who removed the...
Great. See you soon, Shepherd.
They certainly were a lively bunch.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Everyone back home in Elysia is a little more relaxed.
You spent your whole life in the village of the Seraphim, right? With no other humans around for miles.
Until I met Alicia.
I see.
We'll do everything we can, but I'm afraid we cannot guarantee a recovery. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. I very much appreciate your diligence.
And you? Do you consider yourself prepared?
Yes. I shall do everything within my power that I can.
Your distinctive personality is a point I greatly admire as your teacher, but I am aware that it also tends to drive the chancellors up the wall. Don't push yourself too hard. I'll let you know if anything happens.
Yes. Oh, Sorey!
Hello there. Should I come back later?
Not at all. I was just leaving.
Oh, you're...
I thank you for your help at the festival, Shepherd Sorey. I am Maltran, Knight Preceptor and Advisor to the Royal Army of the Kingdom of Highland. Please do all you can to help Alicia. She could use the support of a good friend.
Yes, of course. Wow, I gotta say, she's totally got it together.
I know, right? My dream is to be as cool as her. Let's walk while we chat.
Oh, another escort mission.
Investigating the ruins, correct?
Well, yes, that's true.
Oh, but this time they do limit Sorey's rate of movement. It's weird that they do it sometimes, but they didn't for that similar instance in the last stream.
This is for you.
My knife! Did you find this at the ruins near Elysia?
Yeah, I figured it was yours.
This is an important item that's been handed down in my family for generations. I thought I'd never see it again. Thank you so much.
I do apologize, but may we get down to the matter at hand?
Lady Lila, forgive me.
Wait! Did you just...
I could hear her. I definitely heard Lila's voice.
Well, this is quite the surprise. Hello? I see. So it won't be that easy just yet.
Lila?
I'll explain things, but first, take her hand again.
Lila says she'll explain. Can you give me your hand again?
Sure.
Hello, Alicia? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
I haven't even held my breath yet.
At this point, you've grown
But I'm
much more
still
accustomed to
gonna.
power, to the extent that you can now do what you did before without dulling your other senses.
I don't feel any different, though.
That's good news. It means you don't have to go through all that hassle anymore to make her voice carry.
It was fun in a way, but good riddance.
All right, very well then. Shall we begin?
Oh, right. Lila needed to talk with you about something.
With me?
I would ask that you lend us your power, so that we may find the vessels and the lords of the land.
May I ask what those might be?
To explain fully, I shall need to tell you how this world we live in is
I'm
structured.
begging you, Lila. Tell us how
In
it's
the ancient
structured.
times, the Seraphim and humans worked together in order to protect their land from the malevolence.
The Seraphim and humans work together?
If the vessel they dwelled in was pure of heart and harbored no malevolence, those Seraphim with power would become lords of the land. And through worship by the people, they gained the ability to expand the area of the blessed domain, which repels the influence of the malevolence. The sanctuaries were built to honor the lords of the land and keep the area around the sanctuary safe from malevolence. However, the sanctuary in this town has neither a lord of the land nor a vessel, let alone anyone who will properly pray to them.
Is that why there's so much bad stuff going down around here?
Yes, even if the shepherd purifies the malevolence, it will be impossible to maintain the land's protection without the blessings of the lord of the land.
I see. So you wanted to ask Alicia for help in finding a suitable vessel for the lord of the land.
And should they be found, if those of the sanctuary would properly worship them both, is that correct?
Precisely. Any ideas?
As for the sanctuary, I'm afraid almost all of the pious ones in my country have lost their sense of gratitude towards the Seraphim.
No way.
However, there is a man named Brunor who has recently ascended to the priesthood. He is a good, sincere man who gave his time to help us prepare for the festival.
Would he help?
Yes, I believe so. Time is of the essence. I'll head for the sanctuary at once.
Well, that was abrupt.
But she's not wrong either. We must hurry.
So this is something that's interesting to track too, because
She's gone already.
remember,
She's probably
we
heading
talked
over to the
about
sanctuary.
the
She's
emergence
quite the tomboy, that
of
Alicia.
Hellions and humans giving into malevolence as a kind of emotional process that happens within humans, but now also in this new journey to restore the lords of the land and his blessed domains, there's this idea of protecting humans from the influence of malevolence, which makes it sound as though malevolence is this objective external thing that impacts humans from without, which raises this kind of challenging question for us to keep track of as we keep going through the stream. Like, as we think about humans becoming corrupted and turning into these monstrous hellions, is that submission to malevolence something that's an internal process that they're responsible for and that happens within them? Or is it something external that corrupts them based on their status in the world and whether they have the adequate protections or not? By the way, I don't raise that in the sense of, oh, this game is being inconsistent because it says conflicting things about that. I think it presents that relationship between humankind and malevolence and emotion and the Lords of the Land in exactly that way to raise that interesting challenge, which you could just as easily say about emotions themselves. Like, are those things that happen to me based on my experience in the world? Or are they things that I choose? Because they're not quite rational and reflective in the same way that we think about actions oftentimes in action theory and the way it relates to philosophy of mind. So I think it's the right kind of question to be raising for the issues that this game is entertaining.
It looks like Father Brunor is out around town on an errand.
So it goes. Any clue as to the vessel, at least?
Let's see. Something free of malevolence. In the Galahad ruins north of here, there's a pure and clean waterfall. The kings of Highland traditionally bathe in its pristine holy water before their coronation ceremonies.
Water of utmost purity. That does sound like something that could be a vessel for a seraph.
Is something wrong?
Beasts have taken up residence in the ruins of late. Whatever was there was strong enough to kill all 10 soldiers who came to drive them out.
Hellions?
Likely.
If we don't hurry, then the waterfall could be corrupted by the malevolence. I take it that's not all, is it?
The malevolence is strong in Lady Lake. The holy water will absorb its influence before we have a chance to enshrine and worship it. Water in particular is delicate and easily corrupted by malevolence.
No way. Is there anything we can do?
Of course there is. But in that case, we will need the cooperation of a seraph of water.
Who could that
As
be?
a fire seraph, I'm afraid I am wholly mismatched.
A water seraph, huh?
Yes.
By the way, whatever became of Mikleo? I haven't heard his voice yet.
Speaking of non sequiturs,
Sorta had a fight.
It's a long story.
Anyway, to the Galahad ruins! There's hellions to smack.
That's true. Let's do what we can first and foremost.
Sorey, please let me accompany you.
I would, but you don't have the power to battle hellions.
But...
Sorey, just as the Prime Lord can have sublords, so too can there be squires to the shepherd.
a knight to your round
If
table,
Alicia
if
becomes
you
your
will.
Squire, she can fight against the hellions as long as she is within your domain.
My squire?
But
this sanctuary. No, make that all of the sanctuaries in Highland. They have always been like this from the time I was born. A Highland overrun with malevolence is the only Highland I've ever known. I beg of you, Sorey, please, take me as your squire, so that I may see my homeland free of malevolence.
Just like you'd always dreamed of. As you wish, Alicia. So then, how does this work?
After my
If you didn't clock that, a little aside of Sorey's
name in the
underscores
ancient tongue.
exactly what he was talking
Let's
about
see.
with regard to
A true
Mikleo.
name
Like,
for Alicia.
his North Compass is basically just empowering people to follow their dreams.
A new
and not
bud
doing
forms on the
anything
holy
that would
branch. Its flowers
serve as
bring
an obstacle
fruit.
to
Its
their
fruit
dreams.
begets seeds. The circle of destiny turns once more.
Destiny.
Give life unto the will of the shepherd, and
I think
let
that's
it
the
be
first
proof
call
of
out of
their
Destiny
bond.
we've gotten
Thy
in
true
the
name
game.
as a squire shall be.
Melphis of Vecchia.
Must be that ancient tongue that they were talking about.
Happy to be your squire, Sorey.
Although I don't think they've
Happy
named
to
the
have one,
language
Alicia.
yet. Which is a little disappointing because we know that the series does that thanks to Tales of the Abyss, which was released, 2004? 7? Way earlier than this, either way, between Symphonia and Dawn of the New World. Because it also had an ancient language, which was named Ancient Hispanian, and deeply contextualized and historicized within the broader arc of societal evolution on Aldrint, the name of the world in Tales of the Abyss. Northwest of Lady Lake. Northeast over the bridge, then circle around. Alright. Let's do it. Do you hear it yet? Yeah, over here. Honestly, as much as this is supposed to be a parody, no thinking, just fusing, is I recall that getting me through the game more so than anything else in the past when I played it. I think there's another school of thought, though, to be more generous to Zestiria, where like there is something special about the design philosophy that gameplay systems are arbitrarily and incredibly complex in a given game, but you don't have to master those complex systems in order to actually complete it. And so you basically have the opportunity to dive in as deep to the systems as you want based on how invested you are in the game, because I think there is something special about like being able to love a game so much that you don't just play it, but you understand every little aspect of its various mechanics and how to min-max everything and just have an encyclopedic knowledge of it. Like, I will concede, there are some games I feel that way about, like, I wouldn't say I'm a gameplay master at this either, but just by dint of the work that I put into studying it, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, or Majora's Mask for that matter, right? And there is something special to having just, well, really that intimate a knowledge of anything. It doesn't even have to be a video game, but given sort of the interactive, like, gameplay plus storytelling nature of video games, I feel like those sorts of, like, tiered sophistications of interactivity systems are a cool way of making it more likely than not that players can have that mode of experience with it.
So the world teems with these monsters called Hellions that cannot be seen by normal humans. And it is they who are the true scourge of the Age of Chaos.
Yes, the havoc you see in the weather and people's emotions alike all stem from the influence of the Hellions.
The Lord of Calamity creates
so we're getting
malevolence
more on
and
exactly what I was talking
and
about.
the
So
shepherd's
according
role
to
is
this
stop
skit
them
at
from doing
least,
that.
As is that of the Squire,
it's the
correct?
external
I already
influence
told Sorey
of
much the
malevolence
same,
that is
but this
causing
something I want
turbulence
you
in
to determine
emotions.
for yourself.
So people are not
What
responsible
you
for
want
their
to do with the
emotional
world,
turmoil,
with the humans, with the malevolence.
at least insofar as the
I'd
malevolence
like you to make your own
begets
decisions
their becoming
based on your
hellions through
honest and
emotions.
forthright heart. rather than having them imposed on you by destiny.
But is it acceptable to express myself that openly? I'm merely a squire.
A squire is not a shepherd's subordinate, but one who provides help to him. There's no need to hold back.
Yep, I'm gonna need all the help I can get.
Okay, then if something is on my mind, count on me to say it.
How inspiring.
Inspiring, but Alicia, you kind of, graced me.
I'm so sorry. I was in the moment.
These animated cutaways, they have an impact on us. We're still here in the skit. That's a worthwhile thread to think about too, talking about whether or not Alicia's subordinate. I don't think I called this out earlier. I meant to, but just the swiftness with which a pretty rigid and sophisticated hierarchy is introduced into this world too. That's different than what we got in Symphonia and Dawn of the New World. We got it eventually in Dawn of the New World, especially with like the Centurions and their relationship to monsters and their relationship to Ratatosk and Ratatosk's relationship to the other summon spirits and the world trees. It wasn't obvious right off the bat. Whereas now we already have a pretty robust understanding of like humans and the way that they have to recognize and pay homage to the Seraphim in order to like create these domains of purity that protect them from the malevolence. And there's this shepherd who can redeem humanity, and he can make pacts with seraphs who then have like sub-pacts and sublords and squires who are not subordinate to but bonded with the shepherd. Like there's a whole like relationship tree that we could already trace with a lot of confidence very early in this game, which is different than a number of the other Tales games that have that same level of sort of rigid structure between the various constituents within, but are not nearly as forthcoming with them. Might as well take on the snake.
Counting on you, Lila!
What on earth?
Here it comes, Alicia!
Remain calm. Just attack it like you would any other creature.
Flow and surge! Ready?
Looks like we have to do this in order to advance this battle.
Be careful.
Release my spirit! Release my spirit! Blade of fire!
That's a restoration spell.
Well done. Well done.
Blade of fire! Burning sword! Bring it to me! Breakthrough!
I love those ranged fire attacks. Reminds me a little bit of Shion's rifle play in Tales of Arise. Oh man, I'm talking myself into wanting to replay Tales of Arise on this stream. I really did. I mean, I'm not good at keeping up with the public reception of these games, but I love the Tales games so much, so it's hard for me not to have really high hopes for every new one in the series. But man, Tales of the Arise, because I'm thinking of Tales of the Abyss. Tales of Arise blew all of my expectations out of the water. It was exactly what I needed without my even knowing that I needed it at the time, in so many ways. It's so thoughtfully put together. You see what I'm doing right now. What it is, and I hope this is something you can relate to and so you don't need me to explain it to you, but I have the gamer's habit of just searching every nook and cranny in a map as I progress through it and making sure that I go down all the side paths before going where I need to go. And I'm thinking for this stream, I need to unfortunately break that habit because Zesteria's world is just so big. And like many open worlds, not all of that largeness correlates with more story content. Case in point, we just took a side path, and the result was sunglasses we can affix to characters with the description, "Oops, I was awesome again. Deal with it." This was 2015. That seems a little early in game history for that level of... Is it even right to call that meme-ness, or is it just... It's something pop culture-y, the tenor of that item description. Anyway, suffice to say, based on our interest in the game, it may not be worth our time to explore every inch of the map in the way that I, and hopefully some of you, oftentimes would when it comes to your personal gaming. So I hope you might forgive me if I gradually move away from that disposition in subsequent streams of Zisteria specifically. I'll do my best to keep an eye out for side quests though, because I don't remember the payoff for many of them, but I remember there are at least a couple that are worth doing. Oh, music shift. This is not where we're supposed to go. I actually do remember. No, I don't know if this is a main quest or a side quest, but I remember what I think is side content that culminates here. Which is an apt time for talking about the thin quantity of side content that I remember is really worthwhile in this game. Yeah, Alicia said to head west from here. Not before a battle. Ah, you foolish, belated tutorial system. We already did a Banish Blast during our last battle, because we're very fancy and educated. The enemies canceled it, but it still counted. There we go. Oh, we knocked them all out. +7 grade? Oh, man. Feels like grade inflation, like they talk about in universities these days. No way I could see a grade of 7+ on Tales of Symphonia or Dawn of the New World on a regular battle. Unless I were much better than I actually am at those systems.
Let's do this! Blade bang! Go skate! Looks like we win!
The battles get ridiculous, as you might imagine, or at least to my memory of playing this game in hard mode they do, but especially early on in just like tutorial level field battles, right after you get armatization, smashing that L1 button is it's like a god mode. Which is satisfying. I mean, if you think through the consequences of a fiction where you're really controlling the avatar that's meant to be the savior of the world, and he has this ability to fuse with the divine elemental guardians of the world, you would hope that that fusion would constitute a kind of god mode.
I can sense the ancient tongue. We're near one.
And see, this is the grid that you want to keep track of, because if you can keep in your mind these correlations, then I promise you it's going to be the case that all of the skill mappings that we talked about last time, in terms of that big fat grid of all the different skills that can stack and combo together in different ways based on what you have attached to the equipment that you have equipped to the characters, like that's all going to make sense, because those skill grids are just the result of these correlations between different stats and elements and status effects. But man, at least for me and my expectations in this kind of like Tales JRPG especially, that is so many more levels of correlation and interrelation between those different types of battle information than I'm used to. And so wrapping my head around that is like, honestly, very similar to wrapping my head around all of the new, to me, less intuitive strength-weakness relationships between like new Pokemon elements post like grass, fire, or water, the ones that make sense. Like, don't tell me it's intuitive whether a ghost is strong, weak, or neutral against a fairy. Like, that's there's no way that's going to be intuitive in the way that like fire being strong against grass is intuitive. This feels very similar to me. Oh, far out. I forgot that one of the nuances of this game's open world is that, contrary to the fields in other Tales games, you actually can't save wherever you want in it. It's a little frustrating. Because I know the monster that is moving at like, 1/2 the FPS of everything else around here is like a field boss monster. I was hoping to save before that. Don't remember where the last save circle was. Was it right before here? Yeah, it was right here. Well, I'll save one more time and then maybe we can at least have the confidence to try it once. I'm curious because I remember it as the challenge it promises to be in hard mode on my previous playthroughs. And so I wonder whether it'll be easier to just knock out and move on from while we're playing normal. It might also balance out though because I've been grinding on this playthrough less than I would have been on a hard playthrough for obvious reasons. Managarmer! My man! Oh no, it's resistant to fire. So maybe there's no way for us to deal with it yet. Yep. Oh, well that answers that question. Glad I marked out the save circle before he did that. I will say though, speaking of power creep and gradual progress, I'm much less embarrassed about that early playthrough failure than the early playthrough death to the mimic in my original stream of Tales of Symphonia Remastered, which I still have not recovered from, if anyone's keeping score.
Let's do this! Yeah!
That's as good as incentive as any to grind a little bit more as we go through here. Not that we have to do too much. I think if there's anything we learned from the last two streams, it's that even though I started out the Symphonia stream saying that I didn't think these games were very grindy, they do, more than I recalled, reward the player who takes the opportunity to fight basically every enemy in the field that they happen to encounter. It doesn't seem like you should worry about this right now. Don't worry about it. Oh, tutorial voice, you are so funny. See, and it's so hard to keep track of the martial arts that people know and learn that I didn't even realize until that battle. I don't know whether it's because he just learned it or because I've been using different button combos that Sorey knows Tiger Blade. Like in another Tales game, it'd be so cool to see the moment when he learns or uses Tiger Blade for the first time, because that's an iconic art. It's been used by the greats such as Lloyd Irving, Luc von Fabre, I think also uses it. Probably also Iron Mask from Tales of Arise. I'm not going to spoil his name, since speaking of naming, it's a key part of that story's reveals and narrative structure. But in this one, like, just because of the way martial arts, like, identify martial arts, this group of arts, with the normal attack, it doesn't have the same gravitas of the first time you're using it being, recognition of this is an iconic art that is being learnt and used, as you would with what would otherwise be called an art or a special technique or whatever the flavor for it is in a given game in another Tales entry in the series. I was ranting about Tiger Blade without even seeing that little tutorial cutaway used Tiger Blade as the example. Sometimes things just work out, folks. Entrance to Galahad Ruins. Alright, here we are. Purifying Flame. It's always a good bet.
Sorey, I'm counting on you.
Tiger Blade! She's on! Hey, strike! She's on! Strike!
This is a hellion.
You okay?
Sorry, I'm fine.
For all my ranting about cooking in JRPGs, which I've been through in the previous streams, you can imagine I'm a little gratified to see a game where the cook prep and cook effects are automated.
I just saw a monolith written in ancient...
Or at least can be automated. I don't know if there's also a mode where you can direct the cooking as you can in other games. No, I think it's fully automated. It's just something that you can set as one of those field skills that periodically happens. I like this.
Oh.
Suits me. But then, you know, I say I enjoy that, but it's all trade-offs, right? Because then the question of which automated skills do you want to have active in the party, and how do you want them to stack and interact with the various goals? Like, the system very quickly becomes complex in a way that then leaves me saying, well, maybe it would have been easier to just be able to manually choose when to cook meals for my party if I'm going to have cooking functionality in one form or another in this game. But really, I mean, I'm curious materially if other gamers feel the way that I do about cooking, because small thing though it is, it's something I've been thinking more frequently about, as you might imagine, in Tears of the Kingdom, because as with Breath of the Wild, cooking is such a big part of that game, and I do feel like there's a mental block where even if I have cooking ingredients, you know, in Link's inventory at any given moment, it's such an effort and feels like such an imposition to take time out of my game flow to actually set up a cooking pot and have him cook. And it just, it feels like, I don't know, like it should be simpler. There should be an easier, more automated way. Maybe I'm just the wrong kind of gamer for those systems. That might be the easy and most accurate answer at the end of the day.
Sorey, I'm counting on you.
Tiger Blade! No escape! It's over! Blade Bang! No escape! I'll get it right! Tiger Blade! Blade Bang! Strike! Blade through! You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
Flashy fighting style. First time I remembered grade being explained in that way. Oh, and we're already getting foreshadowing about the way that Lords of the Land work mechanically in terms of our ability to navigate the game, even before we really have direct experience of what that consists in. That's interesting.
I don't think we've checked that monolith out yet.
Yeah, magic lenses are totally out the window now in terms of needing them as an item to be able to see enemies' stats. It's funny though, again, like just thinking about the difference between streaming and my own personal playthroughs, like I would definitely find myself, if I were just playing these games on my own, using magic lenses to measure an enemy's HP and evaluate its weaknesses and things like that. But I haven't really found myself having the need for that in Tales of Praxis so far. Maybe just because I'm sticking to lower difficulties for the sake of prioritizing the story and not letting my own gameplay inadequacies slow things down too much. I find myself wondering what viewers of this kind of stream look for in their streams, because it doesn't have a high degree of verisimilitude in terms of replicating the way I usually play games, because I am ordinarily very willing to fail many times at a given boss and try different permutations of kit and everything like that to ultimately overcome the challenge. But my intuition is that is not really, that's an impediment to engaging with the story if the goal is for us to sit down and engage with the narrative of the game together. I don't know whether that bears out though in terms of what viewers are looking for, so if you have a take on that, I'd be really interested in sharing that with me. I'd be grateful for
it. Everyone okay?
I finished
Ooh.
A bow. It looks like it's just
a
ceremonial.
beautiful big old bow. Like a ceremonial sword, you might
This
say?
bow is a divine artifact.
A what? Oh, right. Hold on. So if this bow is a divine artifact, what does that mean?
A divine artifact determines the form the Armatus will take. Essentially, it serves as a model for the Armatus.
a model for the Armatus?
Oh yeah, like Lila's sacred blade.
The sacred blade of Lady Lake is also a divine artifact.
Huh, and that's why your Armatus is a sword. Hey, does this mean that I can use your sacred blade to armatize with other seraphim as well?
Well, that depends on the circumstances. First, as I mentioned earlier, just as I am the Prime Lord of you, the Shepherd, they would have to become my sublord in turn.
What exactly is a sublord?
Put simply, it is the title for one who assists Sorey while working under the influence of my power.
Speaking of that hierarchy we were talking about
Consider the
earlier.
elemental property of the divine artifact. Each seraph has their own unique element that falls under their control. Mine, for instance, is fire.
So if the divine artifacts all have their own elements, does that mean a seraph can't armatize with it if their element is different?
Indeed it does. It would appear this bow's element is water, and Mikleo is a water seraph.
Let's go.
Huh?
Sorey does not wish to make Mikleo his sublord.
Why not? It's no different than when I was made a squire.
But you called on the Shepherd's power in order to achieve your dream. Isn't that right? Mikleo is different.
As I was saying before, in terms of the way in which Sorey gives priority to dreams. Arguably to his detriment. Mikleo, you are not very sneaky, my friend. And yet, this is where the tight continuity between cutscenes and gameplay and world navigation that we were talking about last time becomes a little laughable or unbelievable. When we saw in that cutscene Mikleo reaching for the bow, and then we're able to moments later turn around and go back to that same bow, and he's nowhere to be seen, and the bow is still here. Like, if you're trying to make things more believable and organic, you kind of worked against yourself in that moment. Altar of the bow.
Sorey, there's something written on the arrow pedestal. It looks like ancient tongue.
Oh, show me!
Please!
Don't walk off with relics and other junk you find in the ruins, okay? And no breaking stuff. On the other hand, treasure chests are fair game, so go nuts.
Very lighthearted, these ancients.
I'm not so sure. The distinction between academic research and crass looting can be very fine indeed. Perhaps their buried message is contemplate always the true intent of your actions?
Now you're taking it too far in the other direction.
Nothing wrong with interpreting it that way. But I'm thinking this might just be a joke the ancients left for us.
Indeed. Ruins are made by people just like us, so it only makes sense for them to reflect human nature. Quite profound.
That's what we like about you, Alicia. Your, sincerity.
I do love that idea of thinking that, like, ancient scripture that we want to revere and study can be just as silly or slang riddled as our modern tongue is. As if that were indeed the way that people were communicating with each other back in the day. Why would it not be, right? Unless we really think that human nature has diverged that much over the years, which seems doubtful to me. It's interesting too, like, I want to pause for a second to talk about this, because, like, I don't know about you guys, but especially in comparison with what we were talking about in terms of the pacing of Tales of Symphonia and Dawn of the New World thereafter, and the way in which they kind of introduced at the just right moment, very gradually, all of the different terms with regard to their world and its fantasy structure, and things like Desians and Crucius and Mana and not core crystals, but the cores for Centurions, and just all of the plurality of things that made up those worlds. You might be feeling, as I am, that Tales of Zestiria hits you really hard and fast with a lot of pretty complicated and delicately interrelated fantasy terms, with the way we just got in that scene where Lila was talking about the bow and the way in which these different divine artifacts inform the substance that will manifest relative to the Armatus, this abstract thing that the shepherd is able to use to bond with the various seraphs that form pacts with him and act as sublords relative to his prime lord. And we already have quite a lot going on, right? It's easy to be overwhelmed by that. But I would put to you, especially if you're familiar with the Tales games, remember, this came out after Tales of Xillia. And one of the things that my buddy Dan Hughes, who also contributes quite a lot to With a Terrible Fate, told me that really stuck with me, and I think is part of why I've had a hard time getting into Tales of Xillia over the years, is that Xillia, prior to Zestiria, was also similarly very front-loaded with regard to all of its fantasy terms and the intricate relations between them. You have a bunch of, at least as I recall, like magic and magic technology terms and stuff to do with mana and the different elements and things like this, in a way that's very much more complicated right off the bat than you would get from a Tales of Symphonia or a Dawn of the New World. But also the plot is kind of concomitantly complicated, whereas in something like Zestiria, yeah, you have that introduction of complicated interrelated fantasy stuff, but that's kind of offset and therefore balanced by a relative simplicity in like the themes of the plot and the structure of the actual story that we're undergoing, right? Like, yeah, there might be a lot of technicalities to understand right off the bat in terms of how Sorey is related to the rest of the party and how that relates to the overall metaphysics of the world and the spiritual realm interrelated to the humans and blah, blah, blah. But we have the space to contextualize and work through all of that relative to a very simple plot of good versus evil and this literal savior acting to redeem humanity from literal malevolence. And so with that simplicity and against that background, it's easier for us to situate the complexities of all of the fantasy terms and kind of quasi-sci-fi context and everything like that. Whereas if you have the dual complexity of all the terminology and a complicated plot with a lot of, subterfuge and, character motivations that aren't immediately obvious and interrelations between characters that we need to parse out along the way, as you get, at least to my recollection, in something like Azilia right off the bat. It just makes things like exponentially more complicated as a whole in terms of the game that you're experiencing to make sense of as you're also being called upon to take action within that game. So interesting to think of this not just as a game that's more complex in the senses we've been talking about than a Symphonia, but maybe also as something that along certain dimensions walks that complexity back relative to some of the recent games in the series history that we haven't played on the stream, but that the developers would have been very conscious of in the creation of Zestiria. Okay, let's get back to it.
Counting on you, Lila! Guess we can't hit them by flailing our weapons. Break through them! Looks like we win!
That's funny. I think Alicia unwittingly shielded us from a battle encounter with that snake. Yeah, we're on the wrong side of the map for the next star. That's alright, we can wander around here. Okay, I will call this out now that we're in a new Tales game. So you might remember, if you were with me all the way back in the Symphonia stream, and props to you if you were following the stream way back then when we started, one of the things I called out was how unusual it was for the field enemies to be these just amorphous blobs of darkness that had no correspondence to the kind of monsters you'd actually be fighting in battle. So to see more of what I mean by that, look in contrast here, like that was a snake and a bat, and now we go into the encounter and we have a bunch of bats that we're supposed to fight. Right? So the icon that we see on the field is actually representational and informative relative to, yeah, and there's a snake on the other side of this column. So we have represented both of the types of monster that we actually saw in the icons on the field that prompted this battle. Seems like an obvious thing, but especially when you have the contrast class of Tales of Symphonia, you see it's not obvious. It's actually two very different ways in which a JRPG can be composed that cascades into a pretty different experience of how we go about random encounters in navigating the worlds of these games. Because in Tales of Symphonia, you never knew what you were going to get when you walked into one of those random shades on the world map. Whereas here, you can kind of judge and have a sense as you're navigating the world of like, okay, I can choose to encounter this kind of enemy if I want to, or I can wait and seek out a different enemy. It's just a totally different relationship to what we see represented in the overworld and the experience we actually get through battle. Keep reminding myself after that commentary I had earlier, if you see an enemy on the map, don't let your first instinct be run away. The experience will reward you.
You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
Oh my god, this is one of my least favorite things in more recent games. Trying to be helpful, but kind of the tutorial boxes that suggest to players, oh, you might consider going to a lower difficulty. Like, oh my goodness, there was this one boss in the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 DLC that I had trouble with because I was underleveled and under-equipped to deal with her. But because I'm me, I was pig-headed and wanted to try to beat her in my current party setup rather than putting a lot of effort into improving the team. And so I threw the party against her more than once. And every time I failed, this stupid tutorial box, the same one, would come up every time, no matter how many times I did it, and be like, hey, if you're having trouble with battles, you should try these different things in the world, and if that fails, you can always crank it down to a lower difficulty. And that made me so much more upset than just the raw difficulty of the battle itself, which I was dealing with on the hardest difficulty already. Like, man, if you're gonna make your game systems responsive enough to introduce that when a player fails, like, you should also go to the trouble of making them responsive enough to back off when it becomes clear that your player is going to try either way. That, or, you know, if it's this kind of game, just lean into it and really bully the player even more when they keep trying and failing over and over again. But this experience I'm talking about did not feel like that kind of experience. It felt like more of just a raw oversight.
Sorey, your right side was wide open.
Really? I need more practice.
I wonder whether that's true. I don't have a tight enough beat on this game yet to know if it pays this close attention to things like the nuances of an individual battle, but if we went back to look at the gameplay of that battle we just had, I wonder if Sorey, like if I really did make it the case that his right side was open to attack, which was what prompted Alicia saying that. That would be cool and kind of like impressively detailed and precise for a 2015 game. Even for a 2023 game, like I would be really kind of surprised if a JRPG of this mold were tracking battle activity on that granular level for that sort of post-battle commentary. It would, like if that were the case, that would be sort of the natural extension of a next stage in the development of the skits that we kind of first saw manifest in Dawn of the New World, where certain skits would open up based on things that happened or didn't happen in battle, or kind of patterns in the parties that we were you know, like the people we were choosing to assign to the parties in the game, things like that.
Careful!
Yes. What? Where?
Above!
I can see it. Don't. It's poisonous.
Stop! Lila, get back!
Okay.
That must be Oma!
The power of purification. Ha! And yet, we are useless. I guess we're not useless. I think they are supposed to be resistant to fire, which is the point of this interaction, but since it's only normal and I am moderately competent, we're still able to put a dent in them. Oh yeah, and you can tell it's a story battle because even though we've brought this one down to its minimum health, it won't actually die. Which kind of tests one's willing suspension of disbelief, to put it politely. More so than a scripted failure, as we've seen and talked about in Symphonia and its sequel. Mikleo, but we told you to stay home. And where did you get that sick bow?
Layla, let me become your sublord.
Are you sure about this?
Wait, hold on now!
You're right. I am stubborn as a rock.
Huh?
I admit it. I'm hellbent on becoming a sublord. But there's something important that you don't understand.
I do understand. I just didn't want you to get involved.
Get over yourself. Do you really think this is your dream alone?
him too?
This is a great musical track
This is
too.
our dream. Now, Lila!
Very well.
Speaking in unison,
O ye born of the
as they
sacred
will when
currents
they
of
don the
youth,
Armatus together.
here let our path be forged, that my unquavering incandescence may be as thy purification. Shouldst thou accept this burden, recite aloud your etc. Now for the Armatus.
The picture of decorum.
He already knows. You bet I do.
Oh, that's sweet.
Here we go, Mikleo!
Let's end this.
Stand strong! Now's my chance!
If you don't slam L1 right away, you just don't get it.
This is our Armatus.
I'll do the aiming, Sorey.
All right. I'm counting on you. Open the floodgates! Aim and fire!
I love that. The idea is two different consciousnesses are embedded within this armatized being. The two different entities are responsible for different parts of its coordination. I wish there were a way to mirror that in gameplay, but probably pretty hard to actually implement that, given that you're just one player with two hands that kind of need to be coordinated with each other. I guess you could radically change the control scheme so that each hand kind of is responsible for the agency of the individual consciousnesses.
Besides,
But
this
that
means
might
that I can now use
radically
the
impede
Armatus
your
in real
ability to
life.
actually play the
Lost
game
those training wheels.
fluidly.
Look at you.
Shut up.
Makes sense. So, that's why he couldn't take it off before.
Mikleo, I wanted to say,
Don't thank me. After all, I merely did this for my own dream.
I know that.
I feel oddly envious. Agreed. Alicia, don't tell me.
Yes. Not only can I hear your voice, I can see you.
Oh, I love it.
Wait, you can see Seraphim now?
I think it just goes to show how strong you've already
Nick
gotten.
Leo and Sorey's bromance was the key to everything. I love it.
Maybe we do have a fighting chance against this Lord of Calamity.
Famous last
Sorey.
words.
Lila, Mikleo, please accept my sincerest gratitude for saving me.
It was nothing, I assure you. But you're welcome.
I thought we weren't supposed to be thanking you.
Guess there's no need to worry.
All right, the waterfall is just up ahead.
This is a really cool idea. It's not quite magic realism because Lila and Mikleo are supposed to, within the context of the fiction, really be characters who exist and have the capacity to act as real agents and potentially be perceived by everyone, even if they, as a matter of fact, are invisible and imperceptible to many people within the world. But there's something that feels almost magic realist about it in spite of that, where because the Seraphim are so emblematic of sort of the virtues and moral compass of humanity in being conducive to benevolence and antithetical to malevolence, like the fact that people don't see them is sort of metaphysically representative of people's lack of moral substance in the way that you would expect of something like a magic realist representation of the world. And so correspondingly, when characters like Alicia are able to go from only kind of modestly sensing the presence of the Seraphim to actually seeing and interacting with them, there's something like also magic realist about, oh, we as the players felt as though these characters were outside the purview of reality within the world in the way that we would expect a magic realist motif to be. But now, because of like the moral and personal progress of these individual characters, those perceptions and representations are being brought into and adopted within the broader reality. It's like kind of a special way of towing the line between what's real and imagined within the world of the fiction. I like that.
This is nothing.
Now, in this random moment in this dungeon, I feel like they're advertising and giving context for that field boss battle that I was talking about ages ago. The one failure we've had so far in this stream. Interesting timing on that tutorial. Burn it up!
I guess something like this is right.
Alright, waterfall at last.
Still looks plenty pure to me. Hey, Mikleo, do you think you can freeze this water?
Huh? Yeah, don't see why not.
Then freeze it and let us bring it back to the sanctuary. Ice is highly resistant to being corrupted by malevolence.
Very well. I'll give it a try.
Interesting when liquid water was highly susceptible.
Thank you very much.
That's what I'm saying. So much complexity introduced
Now,
early on in
before
terms of the
this melts,
fantasy
we better
structure.
take care
Like,
of our other problem.
whence the difference in phases between liquid and solid, and the difference in susceptibility to malevolence. I want to know more. Looks like the memory content from the Earth and Historia that Sorey couldn't see before.
Lila, what was that?
The Earth in Historia. It finally reacted to something.
So that was something real from the past.
Did you see that, Mikleo? He was writing the celestial record.
Yeah, that must have been the author.
There are more Earth in Historia where this came from. If we obtain them, surely we can obtain more information about the past.
Oh man, this is too sweet!
This is only the beginning. Don't get so worked up, or you'll just wear yourself out.
Right.
Smacks of Lloyd's excitement in Tales of Symphonia.
He's burning up. This is a result of the pact we made with Mikleo. He'll get better after some rest at the inn.
I'll carry him back. If we want to cool him down, I guess I better make some more ice.
And then Sorey slept for 3 more days. And he didn't pay that poor innkeeper 1 extra gold.
His fever has gone down. I'm surprised it only took him 1 day to recover. It took 3 when he forged the pact with me.
A third of the time.
He's definitely got natural ability as a shepherd.
Mikleo.
Oh, thanks for helping with the letters, by the way. I caught up with everyone I needed to.
It's okay. I rather enjoy writing letters. Are you awake?
I must have fainted again. Sorry.
You gave me quite a backache.
You looked like you were floating. I told the innkeeper you were just doing some sort of magic trick.
Well, I never was any good at lying anyways.
Don't overexert yourself. You still need to rest.
I'll be fine. We gotta find the Lord of the Land, and someone to pray at the sanctuary before the ice melts.
But...
The shepherd has spoken. Is it not the duty of the Prime Lord, Sublord, and Squire to follow him?
Yeah, interesting. That is kind of consistent with what Lila was saying about destiny earlier, where, like, yeah, there is this sense of destiny, there's this sense of duty. It's not as if you're not bound by that, but in the same way, Mikleo is being kind of playful with it right then to go along with what Sorey was already trying to get the party to do. Isn't it more to do with what you really want and what you're trying to achieve? And if that happens to align with destiny, that's great. And if not, that's not really your problem. So it's like characters happening to comport with destiny after the fact, rather than being bound by it. It's a subtle distinction, but I think that's part of what makes the game feel so kind of wholesome and empowering, despite being a pretty straightforward tale of someone fulfilling their destiny.
There you go. Now eat up before it melts.
Oh, a fruit frappe. The arrangement is beautiful.
Just what I'd expect from a water seraph. Something like this would be beyond me.
But Lila, you make sweets too, right?
Well, yes. I'm good at baking, but don't work well with cold things.
Oh, I see. So Lila is good with baking because she's a seraph of fire, and Mikleo is good with cool sweets because he's a seraph of water.
Even seraphim have strong points and weak points.
It's true. I'm really no good at baking.
I'll say, that one time when you tried to cook boar meats, you turned the heat up way too high and burnt it black as coal.
We were both little kids then. And besides, it only happened because you didn't make the fire.
Guys, talking is fine and all, but
if you don't eat, it's going to melt.
Oh, shoot!
The party is getting absolutely bustling with all these different voices in it now. I love it. And I do find it a very different cadence to the way that, say, our party in Tales of Symphonia built up, because you have such different ontological categories of character, like both in terms of their relationship to the world and in terms of their functionality in battle. The Seraphim are radically different, like a pure difference in kind from the humans. And so, like, getting the combination of not just Lila, but then also Alicia as another human character,
oh, great
then also
Seraphim,
Mikleo as a seraph,
dwell in this land.
but
Turn
then also
thine ears to our praise.
Alicia can't use Mikleo with the
Thank you
Armatus
so
because
much,
she doesn't
Father
have that
Bruno.
power. Like,
Thanks to you,
it's
my
a very
son's legs
complicated
healed
growth of party
considerably.
in a way that
No
you don't
need to
get in
thank
other
me.
JRPGs.
It is your diligent prayer that has made the difference. Be steadfast and pure in mind and spirit as you continue to pray for the health of your son.
A contribution to the sanctuary.
I told you before, madam. I'm afraid I can't possibly...
Please accept it. There's something I've realized. Merely praying for help is an offense to the Seraphim. It is a selfish act for personal gain.
Who told you such a thing?
Well, no one in particular.
You'll need money to pay for your son's treatment, won't you? Use this towards that end instead, for the sake of your son.
My son feels the same as I do. Everyone says the same thing. His wounds were punishment for his selfish prayers. And there are even those who spread vicious rumors about myself and you, Father Brunor. Please, I beg of you, accept this so that we might be saved.
Very well. I shall humbly accept your gift as a token of you and your son's gratitude.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, perhaps these rumors will finally come to an end. May you receive the blessing of the Seraphim, Father.
Right, the blessing. Guess I'll buy a drink.
Oh, buddy, no. Father Brunner.
Princess.
Have
I'm
faith,
here to ask a
man.
favor.
Of me? What could I...
We would like to ask you to enshrine and look after a new seraph in our town's sanctuary. This is a request from the shepherd.
The shepherd? You mean this boy is the... Forgive me.
You are not to be blamed. It is the fault of the royal family that so many have strayed from the noble path.
Excuse me, if I may? It's nice to meet you. My name's Sorey.
It is I. I believe in your tongue. Jesus is how you call me.
For all the trouble I've caused by pulling the sacred blade so carelessly. I know I'm still a fledgling shepherd who hasn't gotten used to things yet, but I promise I will do my best.
Yes, of course. It's quite all right. Please, do not prostrate yourself so.
Thank you.
This request comes from me as well. Please, help me so that I in turn may help this inexperienced but pure of heart shepherd.
Of course.
Oh, they're all prostrate together.
I am honored that I may possibly be of service to
cute.
ones such as yourselves. Though I am frail of body, I shall perform the task at hand with the entirety of my spirit.
I'm glad. Yeah. Oh, man. My foot's asleep.
Seriously? Well then, Father Brunor, when you're ready, I will come visit you again.
As you wish. Do be careful.
Well, that's one way to ask a favor, I guess.
It was very Sorey.
Yes, I think this helped the priest as well.
I like this philosophy of NPC too, where it's not as if all the NPCs in these various towns and locales are set dressing, but rather particular NPCs have attributes that are essential to the cultivation of the world, even beyond the purview of the party as such. So Sorey and Alicia and the Seraphim, they can achieve certain things for the world, but they also need the support of people with attributes such as devoutness and the ability to worship the Seraphim in ways that Sorey as the shepherd isn't in a position to do. And so to be able to recruit Father Brunor as not just an NPC, but rather a member of this community with a particular standing that is apt for this particular mode of participation in the world, I think is a more interesting and particularized treatment of NPC than we get in many other games. Don't fully remember where we're supposed to go next. In truth, I'm already relying on the quality of life guidance more than I'd like to. Search for a seraph will become Lord of the Land. Yes, that's the one piece we're missing. So we have the vessel and we have the worshipper. Not evident where we'll find one, though. We just went that way. Now we'll just have to sort through the town bit by bit. Here too. Maybe we have to go outside of Lady Lake? I don't remember where the seraph is. Don't have any star guiding us here either. Does it say anymore when I look at the synopsis? I feel like I'm lost in a way I shouldn't be yet. No, this has no help. Back to town, I guess. We didn't check in the inn yet.
Travel can be strenuous at times, but overall, I'm enjoying it.
Oh, right. You spent all those years living in the Sacred Blade. This must be your first time out and about in a long while.
Indeed. And is this your first long journey?
Yeah, for both me and Sorey. It's a relief to have companions on the road. I'm looking forward to working with you as the Sublord.
My pleasure. Dependable comrades are to be cherished.
I'm glad that you two joined up with us, especially Alicia. Sorey's always been a lone human among Seraphim. It's a blessing to have her around.
He seems like he was brought up with a lot of love, regardless of his surroundings.
I won't deny that. But I also have no doubt that there are things only humans can understand, that only humans can see. And he missed out on all of that.
Mikleo.
Please don't tell Sorey I said anything.
Of course. It will remain a secret between the Prime and Sublord.
He can't knows I care. It would totally impede my ability to roast him on a daily basis. I'm embarrassed to say, but I'll admit it. Another thing just for the sake of the stream. Like, I've played through this part of the game at least twice, and yet I could not figure out where to find the Seraph, so I did just look it up in another window. And we did indeed. My instinct was right. We did have to leave town. I just had trepidation about taking us that far without actually knowing where I was going. Man, I don't think I'm crazy though. That was like
preparing the bottles.
Definitely less than clear in terms of where we were meant to go next, especially for a game with the level of guidance that we have come to expect in the first few hours of gameplay for it. That's the problem, right? Like, if you have that level of guidance and the player is conditioned to expect it everywhere, you can really find yourself at a loss if you suddenly take it away from her. Whereas if you never have it, the player kind of becomes conditioned to feel things out of her own accord. Really, unless I was totally talking over or otherwise missed a portion of dialogue, they did not make clear where to search for the Seraph who would become Lord of the Land.
I remember this place was in the Celestial Record.
Beautiful butterfly. If you see a butterfly in a JRPG, usually something worth seeing there. Even if in this case, that thing is the butterfly itself. I spy an herb. And a monolith. Oh! Got an embarrassment of riches, folks.
I can sense the ancient tongue. We're near one.
I feel like sometimes in the Tales games, I'll go manual just to... Honestly, if I'm being real with you, I'll feel like a little bit more of a badass in terms of just having more fine-tuned control over the characters, but at the end of the day, I think if I'm being similarly honest, I feel like at least in terms of my capacity to manage these battle systems, maybe for more advanced players, it really is a boon, no pun intended with this game, as we'll see, to be able to manage everything more manually. But for me, I feel like 90% of the commands I'd be inputting would just be more easily managed through semi-auto versus auto.
Experience leads to confidence. Who's next? Very well. How about you do it? Blade Water! Demon Fang! Really? Here it comes! Open the floodgates! Demon Fang! Chill out! Right now! Hold everyone! Demon Fang! Electrification! Right down! Break on through!
You were quite strong, but we're no pushovers either.
You love the range of those armatized arrows. And that's another element of what I was talking before in terms of the quasi-magic realism. The idea that if you think about those bows and arrows and the sword that goes with Lila, like those are all ritual weapons, like ceremonial pieces that aren't supposed to be real weapons, and yet they're so much more powerful than even the ordinary weapon that Sorey would have when he's not armatized. Like the things that bring about the most power, presumably by virtue of their spiritual content more so than anything else, are perceived as less than by humans without that capacity to perceive spiritual content and moral content. I think is the underlying suggestion in this game so far. Oh, I think we need to cross that broken bridge. What are we to do?
We're investigating the collapse of Grifflet Bridge. The cause may be flooding from the rains.
It wasn't caused by rain.
The current is odd considering the water level.
I have a bad feeling about this.
You should evacuate.
Finally, someone who's talking some sense.
Who are you?
All right. Do as Sorey suggests.
Sorey? You can't possibly mean the shepherd.
I possibly
Yes, maybe you
can.
stop the floods.
You really think there's anything that can stop the water spirit's rampage? Water spirit?
I could
It's terrible.
part the water,
Destroy the bridge in an instant. It's some sort of
turn it into wine.
monster.
I'm done. For now.
Silence! Enough with your nonsense! What?
The water spirit! Run!
Lordy, 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 that escalated.
Hurry.
This sort of quest especially
And Ouroboros, why is it in a
feels,
place like this? To ordinary people,
Ouroboros.
a huge water spout.
Don't hit me with that nonsense.
It spins and plunges into
I still have PTSD from the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 study, man. Fuck it, what I was gonna say was this sort of episode with encountering and doing battle right away on the shore with this water spirit feels very like Arthurian legend, or even like Hercules feats of strength, like the various challenges that those mythopoeic heroes underwent in their various quests. Kind of coloring Sorey's story with the same hues right from the get-go. I definitely remember this battle as harder in hard mode. As I said, the kind of game that really cranks things up when it asks you to. And vice versa, I guess, evidently. I don't even think they've explained to us yet in tutorial how to do what I just did, namely switching between which Seraphim are bonded to Sorey in battle, so glad I had the muscle memory to be able to manage that, because we were a little gassed in terms of being able to fuse and defuse with Mikleo. It's all about party management, right folks? Alright. Add that to the Trials of Sorey, the besting of the water spirit. Ha, see? And after I've already done it, then they decide to introduce us to it. Joke's on you, game. I'm 5 steps ahead of you. Because I recently replayed you. Bet you didn't think of that.
What? The Hellion turned into a seraph?
It's the other way around. Hellions that are strong enough to manifest themselves are those that were once Seraphim.
A seraph can become a Hellion?
And Seraphim that have completely turned into Hellions are known as dragons.
Dragons?
So Seraphim
really
and humans
exist?
alike can become Hellions.
So, then the legends were true.
So the wrecking of the bridge was all my fault. I'm so ashamed. If you hadn't been here to purify me, I don't know what would have happened. Thank you.
I'm really glad that we were able to save you.
I am Uno, young shepherd.
Sorey. Uno, in exchange for saving you, we would like to ask you a favor. Would you be willing to listen?
We want you to spend the rest of your days arbitrating the domain of a particular geopolitic. And even trade, no?
Lady Alicia, are you all right?
I'm fine. The water spout has disappeared.
See, I told you she'd be fine. Nothing can hurt our princess when she's got the shepherd at her side.
Weren't you the one shaking in his boots earlier?
Still, the rain has suddenly stopped, and the currents have calmed significantly.
This, too, must be the power of the shepherd.
I always thought it was just a fairy tale. To think I'd see the friggin' shepherd with my own eyes.
Hey! Watch your
The
language.
friggin' shepherd. I mean, come on, dude. Even I know that's got to be sacrilegious in some sense.
Like the shepherd just cut right through the water spout. I doubt anyone will believe me, though.
Who cares? I'd rather believe in the miracles of the shepherd. Friggin' water spirit can kiss my hairy butt.
See, like, and we're talking about these legendary feats, and this is an interesting, like, study in how those feats could go from, like, simple battles of the kind we would undergo to legendary status, right? When we think about the disparity versus what they would see and how they would come to make sense of that in their world as humans who can't see Seraphim and can't see most Hellions versus what Sorey and we as players are able to understand and how we navigate the world according to that information. Right? It's that information asymmetry and perceptual asymmetry as much as anything else that accounts for the propagation of legend in this world. Who keeps spying on us? I want to say as well, I do really love, and maybe this is just the childlike wonderment in me because I feel like it's a pretty naive thing to love, but just the simple idea in JRPGs, especially the Tales JRPGs, where like it came to mind because when they were talking about like Hellions turning into dragons and Sorey saying, so then the legends were true. The idea that like if you hear about a myth or legend or rumor in a JRPG, then 10 times out of 10 it's going to be accurate and you're going to be able to engage with it in some direct way over the course of the playthrough. Like I love that so much. That to me is kind of like the narrative and thematic equivalent of what people talk about in terms of Breath of the Wild's design philosophy of if you can see it, you can reach it and touch it and climb it. But to me, the thematic corollary of that is just so much more meaningful. Like I remember in Tales of the Abyss, especially without too many spoilers, but you know, you hear all about sort of the primordial history of the world in the Dawn Age and all of the actions that this prophet Yulia Jue took in order to basically firm up and define the foundations of the world and its society and culture and everything. And then like late in the game, you don't have to discover this content, it's optional, but you can actually uncover like her actual grave and the staff that she used back when she was alive and part of like her equivalent of a JRPG party fighting for the betterment of the world. And the idea that those people get pulled from legend and mythology into the reality of your playthrough, I think is, to me, part of the special magic of a JRPG and the way that they establish a feeling of just vastness and multi-generationalism in their narratives. Speaking of dragons, my gaming system, which shall not be named lest it tries to respond to me again, keeps thinking that I'm trying to talk to it. Who would have guessed that there would be any negative consequences or impediments, barring that, to introducing voice controls to your gaming consoles? Who was sitting around in the boardroom and decided, yeah, we really need the equivalent of a Google Assistant inside of Sony's hardware? I want names.
Oh, truly, this power is the stuff of miracles.
Looks like he really can't sense us at all.
Which is why he thinks it's the stuff of miracles.
I shall
as we were
worship this
talking about.
sacred water with all my being. O venerable Uno, I am yet inexperienced, but would that I could serve thee for all eternity.
But he is earnest. I'll at least give him that.
What was that? I feel like a sort of wind just blew right through me.
The blessing has returned to this town.
This town is now under my domain. But in order to maintain the blessing, I will need cooperation from the people.
Indeed, there are all kinds of methods besides prayer that one can use to uphold the blessing.
Like?
For example,
You can give him stuff.
I see.
Get great
sure
in
to give it a try.
battles.
This sure sounds like a pain to me.
Pay homage to
I will do what
Pac-Man and
little
the
I
other
can.
deities of the great Bandai Namco.
What's wrong?
I can still feel a powerful malevolence. And it's not far off. It's somewhere in town.
That's the Royal Palace.
So this is a conversation with the Seraphim? A bunch of lunatics talking to themselves out loud?
Oh no, he's the stalker.
I am a messenger from Chancellor Bartlow of the Highland government.
Not the Chancellor.
I have come to invite Sorey to a private dinner conference in light of his great suffering for the sake of Lady Lake.
Have you been watching over Sorey?
Not at all. In fact, I was quite surprised. That the Princess of Highland, as distant as her claim to the throne may be, would have relations with the shepherd that are so intimate.
Yeah.
I'm sure this news will please your beloved subjects to no end, Your Highness.
If you are insinuating that...
Alicia. Where to?
Roundtable Palace.
Very well. Tell Bartlow I accept his proposal.
Round table. It's King Arthur.
Please,
That's
you mustn't get involved
that's what
with
we're
the
saying. It's
chancellors.
King Arthur.
I can feel it from them.
if you missed that.
Malevolence does seem to be coming from them.
I apologize for being so weak.
Don't worry, it's true. We really do want to see what's going on at the palace.
It'll be our first time. You'll have to be our guide.
Just as you have been to me.
Oh, I forgot it's actually tied to grade. My hilarious joke was born out in the actual gameplay. There you have it. It's the muscle memory at its finest. This was one of the things where, as I said, I had actual data I could have used to New Game Plus, and one of the few things that made me strongly consider doing that as opposed to starting fresh for the stream was that, to the best of my recollection, ranking up these Lords of the Land can be quite a bit of a chore, and you're able to like carry over your rankings with them and all the boons that you have in New Game Plus. But that's all right. We're going to do it from 0. That'll be part of the fun of it. But we did it. We restored the blessing of Lady Lake. We learned more about what the shepherd is up to, discovered the Armatus, and affected it not just with the Prime Lord, but with Mikleo, who has become the first sub-lord. First, I say. We can only assume there'll be more. I mean, we've played JRPGs in the past. We understand there are more elements than that. Oh, let's check out this skip before we
Time
wrap
to get
up.
working on these offerings.
You're really getting into it.
I ought to be. The blessing has returned to Lady Lake. But now the problem lies in maintaining it. We will need to do all we can.
That's very true. The blessing is preserved only through daily attention.
Okay, we'll make sure we don't neglect our offerings either.
Right. Reinforcing the blessing will probably make it easier for us in the long run.
I wonder if he would enjoy rice balls, like in that book.
Your offering is rice balls?
I don't recall that being part of the Celestial record.
Oh, no, it was from a picture book. A little girl chased after her rolling rice ball and wound up meeting a seraph. That was one of my favorite stories growing up, and I just thought...
Oh, that's sweet.
I should have known. Sounds like your kind of book.
I have no doubt he will appreciate it. It's not often you get a rice ball packed with authentic emotion.
I hope so.
Back to the touchstone of emotion. Well, on that note then, which was a very touching and emotional, pun intended, note on which to wrap up the stream. That was so much fun. I think a parting thought for this second stream of Tales of Hysteria is I'm really having so much more fun than I remember in my past couple playthroughs of this, digging back into it. And I think that's another point in favor of revisiting your favorite game series. So, not even sequentially, but just in quick succession, one right after the other. Whether or not you want to do that chronologically or in terms of just thematic grasping at related entries like we're kind of doing with Tales of Praxis, because I think when you're sitting down and playing one of these games just once every few years when they come out, it's easy to build up the expectations and say to yourself, man, this has to be better than the last one I played in this 3 ways, otherwise it's not worth my time at all. Whereas if you're playing them all in the context of engaging with the whole series and saying, no, I really want to just see what the essence of the series is and how that's articulated in the similarities and differences between the games, then it's easier to, I think, at least for me, to see each game on its own terms and as part of a broader conversation between the different entries in the series, such that whereas when I was playing this game initially, I think it might have been hard for me to wrap my head around just sort of how simple and heartfelt and unassuming its story is. And so I remember at the time when it first came out feeling almost a little let down by that. Whereas now, like, even rolling into the second stream here, it was just so much easier for me to appreciate it for what it is and as something that is almost like challenging to the broader corpus of the series by virtue of being so heartfelt and unassuming and just stating what it means in terms of its story and the moral import of that and everything that surrounds it. And once you're kind of able to appreciate it and take it at that face value, then I think it's easier, as we've been doing especially in this most recent stream, to explore and appreciate and probe all the more kind of technical and nuanced content of, okay, what are all the different elements of this world? How are they interrelated? What might that be saying about not only the broader themes, but also the relationships between these characters in ways that are not made obvious by the themes, even if the themes are straightforward and unabashedly optimistic in the way that we might not get in a more cynical JRPG or game or story more broadly. So, all that to say, I'm delighted with our choice to play this and Berseria after the Symphonia duology. I think it was the right choice. I'm stoked to dive into what comes next. This is a wonderful chunk of exploration, going all the way through learning about the nature and utility of the shepherd and bringing a Lord of the Land back into commission, one step closer to mitigating the malevolence and ultimately overcoming the Lord of Calamity. So much to look forward to. I can't wait to go through it all with you. Thank you so much for joining me on a Friday night. I've had so much fun. I hope that you enjoyed it too. I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder and chief video game analyst of With a Terrible Fate. This is Tales of Praxis, a study in the Tales series. A study, as I haven't talked about in a while, which is focused in particular on how we can think a lot about the role and agency and impact of players in our engagement in a narrative without necessarily giving players a lot of choice or ability to influence the outcomes of narrative in the way that we might expect of many games that offer multiple endings, like, say, I don't know, a Dishonored, or even the multiple branching paths of like a Skyrim, or even a Shadow the Hedgehog with its, I don't even remember how many endings. That thing back in the day, speaking of classic games, you remember that? Like 7 or 8 endings at least? suffice it to say, I think many people feel as though you can only really talk about the agency and import of a player by giving them that kind of authoritarian power over like the material outcome of a game story. I think that the Tales games are a really nice counterpoint to that, where by and large they are extremely linear in terms of leading to one outcome, or even with Dawn of the New World, the one we played most recently, where it did putatively have multiple endings. There were multiple endings in service of making a single point, where the quote-unquote bad ending, where, you know, Emil accidentally hurts Marta and then kills himself, is not so much an ending to the game, but rather a step and illustration of a point along the way to reaching the proper ending of the game. And I think at least part of what I want to explore and what I'm exploring through this series, in terms of what has made the Tales games resonate with me so much over the years, is that exact idea that players can be drawn into the game and made to feel essential and thematically substantive in relation to the story of the game, without having that kind of authoritarian pull over how the game ends in one of many potential paths. So I think I've been sort of covertly pursuing that so far in the streams, and certainly in the articles that I've published on withtheterriblefate.com in the Tales of Praxis series, which I encourage you to check out. But I think Tales of Zestiria is the perfect opportunity to bring those themes even more to the forefront of Tales of Praxis, because it is so self-consciously aware of the idea that it is unabashedly working along a single destined plot towards a single beneficent and unambiguously morally good outcome for the universe. And we are just going along for that ride, and yet we aren't just going along for it. We're a crucial aspect of how it comes to be. And so what does that mean? And I think that'll be a lot of what we're unpacking along the course of this playthrough together. So thank you again for joining me. We'll be back at the same time on Monday. That's 7 p.m. Eastern for a good 3-hour block, and be rolling into it on Wednesday and Friday of next week too. Now that I am back from my road tripping adventures on the little break I took after Dawn of the New World, we are in it for the long haul. So get stuck in. I hope you enjoy the game well over the weekend, whatever it may be that you're playing or whatever games you're talking about with your buddies. I'll see you back here on Monday, friends. Until next time, this has been With a Terrible Fate. This has been Tales of Praxis. This has been my little puppy Evie barking in the background as she has felt the urge to say hello to you and send her best. Take care, folks.